Okay, at 6 o'clock on May 20th, 2025, I will call to order the meeting of the Village Board of Sister Bay Trustees. Roll call.
Bruno. Here. Shampoo. Here. Harv.
Here.
Housen.
Here.
Canalto.
Here.
White. Here. And Bell.
Here. Okay. Approval of the agenda. And would like to make a motion? to approve
So
the
moved.
agenda? Motion by Canalto,
Second.
second by Hart. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the meeting minutes from April 29th, 2025. Anybody have any additions? I had a question on that as far as closed session goes. I mean, I know that for the white, when we were discussing the white case, Bridget had stepped out. Should we notate that in the
I
minutes? Or
certainly
is that-
can if you want me to.
is it appropriate to? I mean, I
Up to you.
don't know if we get into that much detail for,
I mean, it basically just say when you go in, when you come out, that's all.
okay, let's just leave it as that.
I would maybe notate it just out of the circumstance.
I mean, just
Manner.
make sure it's on the record.
I think anybody stepping out of closed session to recuse himself for that stuff should probably be noted.
Sure. Okay,
Are you making that a motion, Nate?
I will make that motion. With the minutes as amended.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Bell, second by Karanka. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. We had a couple things in the packet. And we had a couple late emails coming in today. Is there anybody out there in the audience who would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Tim West and Sue West from 2217 Mill Circle. I'd like to respond to the resolution 2025-15, modifying the membership of Finance Committee to allow two stakeholders for transparency and whatever else. I agree with that. We agree with that. She can speak for herself, but she usually speaks for me. But anyway, we agree with that. And we'd like to see it for transparency and whatever else. I'd like to see it because you need a ground to start training people, hopefully younger, to come on the village board and the various finance committees and whatever else. I'd like to see it more through all the committees. And number two, I think there has to be a vetting and there has to be some sort of some way to acknowledge people who want to be on it that is not a relative. We are a small community. And I know it's hard to find people. It is not a relative, is not a friend, is not anything related to the people on the committee. I think it should be totally transparent. And I think it should be a training ground for people to come and replace those who are going to be off the board or will lose an election or whatever. So that's where we stand.
Thank you. For anyone else out there who'd like to speak? Anybody online?
I don't see anyone raising their hand or unmuting themselves.
Okay. On to 6A, proclamations, Historical Society 30-year anniversary. They are having the 30th year and they've asked for a proclamation from us, so this is what Julie has come up with. I believe you did, Julie?
Could you talk a little louder?
Yeah, so this is the proclamation for Sister Bay Historical. It's their 30th year anniversary. Julie came up with this proclamation.
Would you like it read?
Sure.
Whereas the Village of Sister Bay values its local history and recognizes history connects people to their communities and provides valuable insights into how broader events, people, places, and artifacts impact local lives, fosters critical thinking, strengthens community bonds, and inspires future generations. And whereas the Sister Bay Historical Society, comprised of volunteers passionate about our local history, have worked tirelessly for the past 3 decades to preserve our history, educate the public, and share stories that help residents value their community and the people that helped shape the village. And whereas honoring the Historical Society for their past 30 years of contributions to our past, present, and future is critical to helping residents understand the contributions made by these volunteers and the importance of supporting the Historical Society's mission of ensuring our history is not forgotten. Now therefore, the Village Board of Trustees for the Village of Sister Bay, Wisconsin hereby supports with pride and proclaims the year 2025 as the 30th anniversary of the Sister Bay Historical Society. Signed by NAPA. Thank you.
Motion to approve the proclamation celebrating the Sister Day Historical Society's 30th anniversary.
Motion by Olson,
Second.
second by Shampo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, then we have a proclamation for Pride Month.
So moved.
Motion by Berto,
Second.
second by Allison. All those in favor?
I,
Opposed?
Could you read that proclamation, please?
Sure, I would you?
Whereas lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual citizens and citizens of all orientations and identities visit, work, and live with pride in all of Door County. And whereas many LGBTQIA+ visitors and residents have an immeasurable impact on the cultural, civic, and economic success of the country and our village. And whereas local LGBTQIA+ residents have often faced adversity and challenges as they strive to enjoy the same quality of life and opportunities as non-LGBTQIA+ residents, and are deserving of a village that embraces and welcomes with pride all persons. And whereas Sister Bay wants all visitors and residents to take pride in the diversity of their community and the beautiful contributions we all make to those places we love to visit, work, and live. Now therefore, the Village Board of Trustees for the Village of Sister Bay, Wisconsin, a small waterfront community enriched by diversity, enhanced by a culture of acceptance and kindness, strengthened by respect and appreciation for all, and chosen for their welcoming spirit on this 20th day of May 2025, proclaims June 2025 as Open Door Pride Month.
May I make a question, please?
So this.
It's too late?
Yeah, it's fine, sorry. Okay. All right, on to 7A. Ordinances and resolution recreating the ad hoc village planning task force. So last month we discussed, do we want to recreate the task force? We decided we did. So this is the resolution to reestablish the village hall planning task force.
I just had one question, because it doesn't say the term for the task force, where earlier, I think it was to have been dissolved at some point in 25, right, Julie, I think. So is there an end date? Is there an end date for this or no? I don't know if we discussed that.
I did not put one in the resolution because none was discussed.
Okay. Well, so we didn't discuss it. Okay. All right, so I didn't know if we needed to have a discussion about that.
I don't think we need one. I mean, I think when the time comes, we'll know it and then we can. That's my opinion, like,
Okay.
The only thing I can see is sometimes things will go on and stay on the books. But I think that maybe a 2 years time might be an appropriate time to review this.
oh, absolutely, and something like that for sure.
So not to say that we don't want it, but just to make sure that we review it. And I suspect that the village board, if we haven't come to a resolution to this.
Yeah.
We'll choose to keep it going. You know, how everybody else feels about that.
I didn't know if we also had any kind of standard operating procedures or precedent or something for task force. I don't know if we have that, if that's worth having, but I suppose they're all slightly different, so.
In the past, we have not had endpoints. We have just left them. That way we don't have to keep going back and recreating them or extending them and
Okay.
coming up with new resolutions. We would know when the time was appropriate and
Okay,
dissolve it.
I honestly go either way and the date or not.
I have a slight inclination towards putting an end date on it because it's a task force, but that's not particularly strong. Anybody else have any feelings on this?
I just feel like it's gonna go until the village hall is renovated one way or the other, so. I don't think if you put an end, I don't know if you can put an end date on it, like it's gonna happen when the sun's up raised for it, right?
Is this task force just reporting to us or do they report the parks?
You report directly to the board.
Right.
Yeah.
They're gonna interact with other committees.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what they're doing, but they don't.
Yeah. I mean, as long as, I mean, yeah, I don't care either way. I'm fine just keeping it ongoing.
Usually a task force has a task. And then when it's done, that's when we would take it off the books. So
But I think the reason that they can't finish their task is us and financing and bigger things. That isn't necessarily their problem, and they didn't quite finish the task, right? They haven't got quotes back and some of the stuff that we wanted. You know, like last meeting, we didn't have numbers, so I feel like we should still allow them to continue to do the work they were doing.
Well, I guess what I'd say, look at what the resolution says there, because it says that they're gonna develop a funding strategy.
Yeah.
Is that
we had
something
talked
we still
about
want to task them with doing? I mean, I've had some conversations with I had a conversation at finance about this, and I also talked to Nancy Akerley after the last board meeting, saying what I think we should do to help facilitate this is I don't think we should leave it entirely up to this group to come up with the funding for it. I think what we should do is take any proceeds we get from the admin building, when we sell that happens, and put it towards this.
I agree with you, Nate, wholeheartedly. I think, and Bridget, I agree with Bridget, what she said. This task force their work will be done when we've upgraded and finished our work on the village hall. And like many residents feel that the money to renovate the hall should be from the taxpayers, from the village, not put it on the backs of some fundraising committee, which is a huge endeavor with all these different fundraisers going on. I really think it should be the village's responsibility. If we can fund an ice skating rink, we certainly can take care of our village hall, which everyone in this community poured out their concern for keeping.
Not everybody.
Yeah.
Well, there was a few black sheep.
There were. Yeah, and the ice rink is doing.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but the village gave the ice rink a goal to match, and
Right.
something like that could be done. I think people are way more likely to give to it and save our taxpayers money than they are to be happy about paying more in taxes. So I think we should let them work on it, come back to us. Give them
I'd
some
like to
time.
see some sort of an effort for fundraising.
Yeah, I think so too. I think,
Completely
I mean,
understand that.
people will give to
realistically,
it,
It's not easy, but.
so we can give to it.
Well, and that was when we originally talked about this. That is what everybody was saying in the audience when they wanted. When it was on our agenda about, should we remove it? Should we keep it? What should we do? And there were a lot of people up in arms, and people in the audience at that meeting all said they would fundraise for it, if that's the way to get it done. And so I think, not saying it can't be similar to the ice rink where the village puts up some money and the committee does fundraising also. But that's what they said. If that's what it was going to take to save it, that's what they were willing to do, is my recollection from that meeting.
I guess what I believe it is, it's gonna be a hybrid between the two. I think to say that the taxpayers aren't gonna take anything on, well, it's not actually taxpayer money there. I look at that as, this is why I really like that admin building, is because it's money's already sunk cost in the village. And we also get to preserve that building as well, which I'm not so sure is
Somebody's bank.
unsalvageable as some might think. But I don't know if we're limiting it based on how the resolution is in here, because as it reads in here, it seems to me like we're saying you have to come up with all that funding. And that's what we've said consistently since this task force has been in place. So I don't know if we want to try and tweak that wording on there or if the majority of the board just wants to leave it as is, then it's left as is.
It just says developing a funding strategy.
Yeah, it doesn't say funded at all.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's good.
So
I think it's good. the way it
vague
is.
enough,
Yeah.
the way that it's currently written.
Okay.
We'll make a
And
motion,
if part of their strategy is that the village kicks in, okay,
and we should probably in a little bit have a discussion like that, or your idea with the admin building. Like, I think that's a good idea. And maybe down the road, we should talk about it and give them some kind of commitment.
Well, because we've had meetings with the Friends of the Ice Rink. We had meetings with Friends of Pebble Beach. We've had meetings with groups like that, so there's no reason that we can't do that with, I'm sorry, with the village hall group as well.
Because I'd say I'm also in some very, very preliminary conversations to see what we can do to have a organization that could take this, a 501(c)(3) potentially. That could work with some of these projects as the village board sees fit. Because it's a lot easier to convince money to give people, for people to give money to a 501(c)(3) than it is to give to the village
The
government.
municipality.
Those are some very, very preliminary conversations. Is there a motion to,
I make that motion.
motion by Kadambo,
Second,
second by Shampo, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. A modifying membership for housing committee to allow 2 additional trustees.
I'm not opposed to this, but why? I don't think we got into the conversation last month when this was brought up, why you wanted to expand the membership.
Because there is, I mean, there's one trustee that has been at just about every meeting. And I think that it's, why not take advantage of that if they're showing up to be engaged on there? And there's another trustee that has got some, has some interest in it, some background from the Wiltie Committee.
Okay.
So that's where that
Okay.
concept came from, and I don't really wanna have to tell Warren Reyes, no, we're not gonna let Chad come on to the housing.
The only
committee.
person that likes me sometimes.
That would have meant to add 2 additional trustees and then change the number to 9. Something I did notice is I don't know that we've had full attendance on there consistently, so I think although it says 9, I don't think you're actually gonna have 9 people there consistently, and then set sort of board. It probably is beneficial to have some of those people, even if they're not showing up all the time, although I leave that to the chair. If people are consistently not showing up, it might be time to not have to make it. But we don't have to make that decision now. That is something I did think about as you have a bigger and bigger board. Discussion? By Berto? Second by White, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Modifying finance committee to allow 2 stakeholders.
So I had issue with this last month. I take offense to what was stated in comments and correspondence as finance chair for many, many years. I was not chair for a while, and I have resumed that position recently. On not being transparent. We hold tons of meetings. Each committee holds meetings where they discuss the budget. That just bothers me. I just wanted to state that for the record. For clarification, these would be voting members, and are they paid?
But I would have them be paid just like they are for parks, and
Okay,
they would be.
there's a lot of committees where they volunteer. The other concern that I brought up last month is, and I can't remember exactly, and I didn't bother staff to get the exact number. Last year, we spent somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 bringing the 2 new trustee board members up to speed, which was Nate and Louise. Louise is still on, so her depth of knowledge, you know, is better than what it was a year ago, and Nate took himself off. I don't want to see us be spending money trying to bring up citizen members or stakeholders or whatever you want to call them. Constantly spending this money so that this is not like, you know, debits and credits in your own checking account. It's government accounting. It's different. That's all I want to say.
Well, could we have terms for stakeholders?
Like a minimum term, like if
Right.
you're gonna be trained in for this, you have to serve at least.
Like we have
3
terms
years or
for
whatever.
plan. I know it's not mandated, but could we have terms just so that, because I think it's always important for anybody that's going into a committee, and many people go into committees, you know, sort of wide-eyed and not sure, but in this case, if they went in knowing what the parameters were and knowing what the ground rules were, that would be helpful. For your term. maybe?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea. To your first point, Denise, I agree with you, and that's unfortunate. I think most people in this community, I mean, as you see by our attendance tonight, don't understand they can come to all these boring meetings all the time if they want. So I don't, whoever said that, I hope it wasn't directed at you. I don't believe that, but I do think this is a good thing for us. I think on parks, we have citizens, on Marina, we have citizens, on, I think everything but personnel maybe, which makes sense probably for us not. I just don't see how it's a negative. I think, and I get your concerns about having to bring people up to speed, but that's kind of, I never went to a committee meeting with anybody ever bringing me up to speed on anything when I first started. So there is a learning curve and people will get stronger as they are affiliated with it. I think if people are willing to sit with Vlad and learn more, I know personally, I'm gonna do that. So I think there's ways to try to not make it a burden to you. I just think we have a history
But
of
that's
this.
a burden to Vlad.
I get it, but this, we have a history of this on all of our other committees. It seems odd that we don't in this one. And that's where, just like when we had, you heard me for 6 years, we had 4 people on parks. Why do we have 4 people on parks? Now we have 5. It makes more sense. It just doesn't make sense. We don't have 5 people on this and some community members. If there was a reasoning that somebody had for me for that, I would listen to it, but I haven't heard one. So I think to be consistent, I think it's a good thing for the village to do. And I do see personnel being a little different. That's probably the one I look at a little differently because it's more housekeeping matters sometimes. But
But we
that's
talked about
just my
bringing-
view on it.
We talked about bringing a citizen or stakeholder, particularly one that has
Some
experience
for
in
sure.
HR, which is huge, on for that committee.
I just wanna say that I understand that it's probably a pain in the butt to train people in, but if you get people from the right background, I feel like they maybe will train in pretty quickly, and you can have that be something that can be done on their own time to an extent, like I was just given finance books that I will be pouring through to train in for this committee. I also think it's important to pick people who have a little bit of a background and understanding of finance to begin with. I think the 2 people who are up for this are very well versed and very qualified, and I think it would be a great idea to include them because otherwise, if you only have trustees on the finance committee, you can't just be on that if you're super knowledgeable. You have to be on the board first, and that's such a huge time commitment that I feel like you're missing out on all these super smart people who live in our village who don't have time to be on the board and then on that committee too.
But it's also why we're elected.
Right, no, I get that, but I'm saying, I mean, I just think there are such great resources who live in this village who could add benefit to that committee in particular. And maybe, I do agree with maybe some minimum terms, like if you're gonna be trained in for this, you have to do some training on your own time and you have to commit to at least 2 or 3 years. So that
I
you
like
don't
the
have to do
idea
it
of
all the
3
time.
years.
But then you have continuity, because it's, let's say you come on board in April, 3 months later, it's budget. 3 months later, budget's done, 4 months later, 5 months later, budget's done, right? And then things come up, but otherwise, you don't meet that often in the first half. I mean, you do, but there's things come up, and then it's budget time. And then it rolls, and then, do you know what I mean? So it's not a monthly meeting. So so there's, a lot of it is time on your own, or teaching yourself, or asking another committee member to try to help you, and also so that it's not, it's not considered a meeting or anything like that, but that, and to Denise's point, it's not Vlad's job. I mean,
It's not.
asking a few questions here and there without a doubt, like Vlad, why is this? So for instance, tonight when we go through financials or something, as a member of finance or whatever, make a note and say, go back and say, I saw this, I'm not quite sure what is, so. Anyway, yeah, that's, continuity is huge. For ask anybody in the private sector or public.
If you do make a 3-year term, considering you're starting them both at the same time, would you somehow figure out a way to stagger that?
I would actually say we should do 2-year terms, so it kind of matches what the board is, and we should just do for one for 1 year and 1 for 2 years, so you don't have somebody who's gonna step off and have that cliff. You lose a bunch.
Well, I get that, and I'm wondering if we couldn't just have the intent of appointing somebody for in somebody for 2 years, knowing that in a year, we're gonna reappoint that person for 2 years, just so it's staggered. I don't know if it's that important, just a thought. Or if we're gonna do 3-year term, start one right now at a 3-year term, start one at a 2-year term, renew it in 2 years, hopefully. They want to, and they're doing well. Just an idea, so you're not replacing 2 people at one time
Yeah,
at the same time.
I've been on many boards, that is a. pretty
Because
big
it's an
nightmare.
advantage when you come onto a board that knows a little bit about what they're doing.
It's really a nightmare.
If you had
Yeah.
real elections and 2 people got off and
Mhm.
those, it could be.
It's not good.
Yeah, we experienced that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a big turnover.
Yeah.
I would agree.
So if there's a way to do that, I don't know how you do that, but.
So what's consensus, a 2-year or 3-year term? When does everybody feel?
I mean, I look at the chair, what do you prefer for length of term?
3, so if we do a 2-year and a 3-year.
A 3-year now and then.
That's
renew
under
it, yeah.
staggered, it's the only.
But- And then the 2-year is renewed at 3 years
Yeah,
after
so
the
the-
initial term.
Okay. Good with that. Something when I hear people talk about transparency, Denise, what I hear people saying there, what I think they mean to say is accessibility. And sometimes you look at a finance committee packet, and like you say, government finance is different. So I look at this as having a chance to have 2 more people out there that know about this, that can communicate with the public. But I understand why you'd take offense to them saying, no, we're not being transparent. We have a lot of really good state laws we have to follow. And we do. But there's another thing we could attain there.
I don't know that 2 individuals are going to change the perception in the village. But I understand I hear what you're saying.
So I'll make a motion,
Louise,
to,
can I,
beg your pardon, can you do it?
before you get there,
Sure.
can I just say, okay, so you want to change the resolution to indicate that they're paid and that the terms would be 3 years staggered. The first one would be 2-year, 3-year. As staff, I do have a concern. Last month, the board talked about these being stakeholders. A stakeholder means they don't have to pay taxes in the village. If they're responsible for our taxes, would you want them to be citizens
I
or
think they should
residents
be
instead of stakeholders?
Citizens.
So when I've defaulted to stakeholder on everything, because there are some people that aren't necessarily absolute residents here that are still here. And that's up to the board to decide. I mean, like, should the board ask that question, like, are they really a stakeholder? Are they really involved? And the board could always come back and say, you know what, they don't live here. We don't think they qualify as a stakeholder. We don't want them to be on here. And that would be a legitimate reason to push somebody back and say, no, we don't want them. But the board has got to approve all these people. And we had an issue in Marina
Yeah.
where we lost some folks
Yeah,
because they
a lot of
wanted,
great experience with
yeah.
that. Our own ones.
I think I want them to be taxpayers in the village of Sister Bay.
I don't think
agree
that's,
with Louise.
what if somebody lives in an apartment? I think that's kind of,
Oh,
I mean,
sorry.
they are technically through the
Alright.
rent paying taxes. and
Yeah,
roundabout.
sorry, yeah.
What if they own a business here and they pay taxes? That's
Yeah.
fine too.
Yeah.
That's
I think that's
they're
fair.
taxpayers. So your
Yeah,
choices
okay,
are, according to your bylaws, you have a resident who is a person who resides in the village and is a registered voter.
Yep.
Then you have citizen, who is a person who is a village property owner, the owner of a business located in the village, or a person with recognized experience and qualifications for a particular committee, whether they be a resident or non-resident of the village. And then stakeholder is a person with a vested interest in the outcome of a specific village property, product, action, or service.
I would want citizen.
Yeah.
Citizen.
I would still argue for stakeholder and if that's what the board wants to do, they could do that as they approve. But if citizens, what everybody else wants, then.
Yeah, I mean, I could be for either one of those for sure, but I'm not, it's,
I think the reason I like citizen is because there's nuances to, being familiar. You know what I mean? And being and understanding the community
well,
when you're doing anything in the community, whether it's financial or anything else,
yeah,
There's things that you take into account. Having nothing to do with bias, I didn't mean it that way, but just understanding the community because you live there and you use it and
yeah, they're just a little bit more in it, like having that school board member that doesn't have any kids in the school district that sends them to a private school, like, you don't want that person. Right? You want a person that's in it all.
well, it has real world experience in the village and knows they use it. you know, the village is part of them.
I'm good with a stakeholder though too, but
Well, I would say citizen, I would agree with Denise.
That's a majority of this.
Okay. So should the motion say that we accept
Julie,
modified? Go ahead,
everything else
go
you
ahead.
wanna add?
That was.
Okay,
I was just gonna say, accept it as, modified. Is that about right? So accept resolution number 2025-015, modifying the membership of the finance committee as modified.
Which is the paid position, citizen members, and 3-year staggered terms.
Yes. I did have a question on timing of this, so this would be maybe.
we've got a motion on the floor.
Second.
Sorry,
Second by way, okay, further discussion.
I just wondered what the timing was, that's all. So we can talk about that later. All right.
Okay, all those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Carried. Okay, I wanna jump down to 8F before we go to 7D. I think that makes sense.
And what page is that on?
Ex officio.
84.
Thank you.
The research on this.
The board had wanted research into ex officio. There's not a lot out there on Robert's rules or with the league, so what I found is in the staff report. And then basically, what we're finding is your bylaws should kind of dictate what role, what the ex officio member plays.
So I think that do we look at 84 and then do we go back to 70 and have discussion? Is that appropriate then? I mean, I just want to make sure everybody's looking at the information you gathered relative to.
Right, I'd like to go, on page 84, go through at the bottom of the page, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
Do they serve in the role only if a quorum is not or will not be present? I say yes.
I would agree.
That is the way that it was originally set up, when Dave Lena was president.
Okay,
If serving in an ex officio role, can they vote, or do they vote only in instances of a tie vote? I would say that they should vote if they are there so that there's a quorum,
Mhm.
but not otherwise.
But that would be the only circumstance where they would vote. That makes sense to me.
I guess I'd argue they should also vote if there's a tie vote.
I don't have a problem with
I think that's, no, because if you already have a quorum of the committee.
Okay.
And then
There's
the
a
ex
tie vote.
officio, it's a tie vote, it does.
So it dies.
Yeah, I don't think the ex officio should be swinging the vote one way or the other,
Yeah, I
who
agree.
is not sitting on that committee for that particular meeting.
I agree. And a per diem, yeah, if they're there in a role for the village, then they should get a per diem.
If they're part of the meeting
Yeah.
to make it a quorum, but
Right.
not if they just show up.
Right.
Those are
I don't know.
my opinions. on
Anybody else
those
thinks,
three.
I agree with.
that. I get that.
Okay, so now let's go back to 7D.
So wait, one sec, so it says, okay. So these 1, 2, and 3, what we just stated is, Julie, does that jive with what our current bylaws are or not?
No, the bylaws don't talk about this. They say that you can have an ex officio member,
But doesn't
but
say
it
what
doesn't say
they,
when.
there's no
or-
details about their
Right,
role in different scenarios.
okay.
7D is to amend the bylaws to match what we have for ex officio.
Sorry,
So there.
yeah, it is, okay, gotcha. So back to page,
16.
So then we're looking at this resolution with those three,
Based on
that
those.
understanding of 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
That I don't know if we need to make this one.
Let me- Just to kind of walk through this and make sure that what we're amending reflects that. So page 17, we have in the event a quorum is not present, the village president serving in an ex officio capacity may participate in the meeting so that a quorum can be declared present. So that matches.
what we just decided. I'm gonna waiver off, and then page 19. The village president or staff person, if allowed by these bylaws, who may participate in a meeting solely for the purposes of ensuring a quorum is present at a meeting, so official business may be conducted. The ex officio person shall not have voting privileges, but may participate in discussions. If the ex officio member is the village president, a per diem shall be paid. So we would want to change that. And the reason why we talk about staff is because a lot of times when you read the makeup of your committees, you say that your staff are ex officio members.
Oh,
So I think we need to make it very clear, the only one that can vote is the president serving in an ex officio capacity.
so trustees can't be ex officios, is that correct?
So page 19, we'd have that revision, make it very clear, it's just the president that's gonna have the voting right as
Right.
ex officio.
That makes sense.
Okay, and then we'll keep going here. At the bottom of the page, you'll see. We talk about finance committee, that will be revised to reflect the resolution that we just talked about.
Then that would say citizens, or, well, never mind.
And staggered term.
Yeah,
I'm gonna keep going through here, and then page 21, housing committee, that reflects what you just discussed. Next change would be on page 24. Village administration, building review task force. That was just a correction, that task force is actually gonna end next month. But the bylaws had said it was a 12-month, so I just took it out, but. That's gonna end, and then next time we amend our bylaws, we'll take that task force out. But at the bottom of that page, on page 24, we have village hall planning task force. And that would be, so this is being revised to reflect the resolution we just discussed. And then we move into the board bylaws. So what we just talked about were the committee bylaws, and then we move into the board bylaws. And basically they would be amended to reflect what we just talked about as well. Saying, this one's a little clearer on page 27. It says the president shall serve as ex officio of all committees, commissions, and boards organized by the village. In an ex officio capacity, the president shall not have voting privileges, but shall be paid a per diem. So that would be revised based on what we just talked about. You see the committee listings reflect what we talked about. Skip ahead to page 30. Ex officio, again, we've cleaned that definition up to be consistent with what we talked about, and so committee bylaws and board bylaws are the same. And those were the only changes.
so do we need a motion for,
Motion to amend the
First-
village board and committee commission bylaws as amended.
As presented and amended.
right?
Yeah, you're approving the resolution is what you're actually.
So we'll go ahead and make that. Well, you said it.
I would recommend a motion to approve resolution 2025-016 with the revisions discussed.
Thank you. Oh,
So moved.
Motion by Halson,
second.
second by Kadanko. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, 8A. Highway 57 contract.
So with the Highway 57 trail, for those that don't know, we did receive a Department of Transportation grant for a little over 900,000. And so we have to select an engineer, and then we have to select someone for construction services management, who then will put the project out for bid at some point. So the engineer and the construction services management can be the same firm unless it's the firm that wrote our grant application. So the Parks Committee discussed this, and what they recommended was McMahon be awarded the engineering contract. And that,
Stand back.
Normally you change it to both be McMahon.
No,
Robert E. Lee, I'm sorry. Robert E. Lee.
Sorry, get the wrong one.
Okay, Robert E. Lee for both though.
Yes, yes, yes.
Is what you changed it.
Yeah.
So originally they
I
wanted
thought you were
Stan
talking
Tech.
about why we had to do this. second
Yeah,
time.
at first it was Stan Tech and then I'm sorry, it was
Yeah.
revised to Robert E. Lee. So Robert E. Lee, so what we would do is enter a contract with Robert E. Lee for engineering services. We know what that is. The DOT then requires for the construction services, what they call a QBS, where you don't know how much they're gonna charge you. So today, if the board is okay with pursuing the QBS with Robert E. Lee, the next step is, so we do a contract with the engineering, but now we're gonna negotiate a contract with them to see what they're gonna do and what it's gonna cost. The other part of that is the DOT, if we agree to Robert E. Lee or whoever we select, the DOT still has to approve that firm. If they have the final say on who we're gonna work with on construction services. So this is kind of like a step one before we see the final contract for the construction services. That'll come back to us.
So if you approve it without knowing how much it costs, can you then say, no, that's way over what we're willing to spend?
Right, so what we're doing is we're approving to work with them for construction services. And I think we should just say contingent on an agreeable contract. Okay.
And the reason we have to jump through all these hoops is because there is a grant involved.
Correct.
That's how we got the funding.
Yeah.
But they originally wanted Stan Tech to do it.
No, no, it's because of the Brooks.
It's a Brooks Act.
It's the Brooks Act, because nobody bid on the project.
So
That's how we ended up.
going back
Here.
to the DOT, right? Going back to the state and getting the money from that. This is where we got the money, isn't it?
The DOT gave us,
Yeah.
is giving us.
Right.
Chad?
So the 906,000, what was that amount, is
Yeah.
coming from the DOT,
Correct.
so they have a lot of strings attached, is basically what you're saying.
The route we're taking, yeah.
Because if we have to, I mean, you might remember this, I don't think anybody else will, but like the path and along 42, was it DOT pretty involved with? Not the new extension of the path, but the one we've had there since I can remember.
Since Ron Kane was administrator.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, they dictate the timeline when we let the project out for bid. There's a lot, they have a lot of pull in it.
So it's like 2027, right? That's going. Part of it has to do with the lag in terms of administration, but also getting bid. I mean, just.
Takes a long time, yeah.
So if the board accepts the committee's recommendation, it would be to enter an engineering contract with Robert E. Lee. And then pursue a contract with Robert E. Lee for construction services.
So moved.
Motion by Berto,
Second.
second by Allison. Those in favor? Opposed? Housing Committee, Realty Property Funding Request.
So the housing committee has done a lot of work. They've been, for a while there, they've been meeting twice a month. They're to the point in their model, so they're coming up with this model of how someone can afford a house, you know, is the land donated, is the infrastructure donated? Does that come with the purchase price? And they've been spending a lot of time looking at a lot of different models, kind of said, hold on, before we go any further, let's make sure the board is even gonna release this money, because why are we going through all this work? Why are we developing a model if the board isn't gonna release the money that was approved in the CIP? They cannot complete the model until they know the value of the land and the cost of the infrastructure, so they can say, you know, let's say the value of each lot, it would be 50,000 and infrastructure is 25,000. Then they would say you know, the model could look like the village, I don't want to say donates, but gives the first 75,000 of that purchase price on that home so that they can then qualify for the mortgage. They can't complete it until they know what the cost of the land and the infrastructure is. They can't do that until a subdivision plat is developed. And they're at a standstill saying, we're not gonna meet again, we're not gonna discuss this until we know whether this project is even moving forward.
I tend to I hear what they're saying, but I tend to disagree with that. Because we did have it in the CIP.
Right.
We're holding back on it right now.
It's a placeholder.
It's a placeholder. And I think what needs to be determined is, are we committed to at some point in time? And I can't say when that time is, with the village's finances. But maybe the bigger question is for the whole entire board, no matter, within a reason of up to, I mean, in the CIP, it was 3.5 million. The longer it goes, the more that infrastructure is going to cost. The land, we already bought it, we own it, and its value will go up, but the land won't cost us any more money. And so if we are committed to this, and if we are committed to donating the land for someone to develop and taking on that debt for that infrastructure, isn't that? Because I don't know what, you're talking about a lot of money to get a number. Right?
Right, they'd like to, so,
And so I don't know that that is feasible right now. But I also don't want to hold up their continued work if we are, as a board, are committed to moving this forward, even if it's slowly.
Ken?
What amount are they asking for? All of it?
so what they
Haven't seen
need,
them all.
so what they need to move forward is to actually basically get the subdivision plat created, so they know how many lots are there. From there, they can determine the value of that land, what size are the lots to determine the value. And then the engineer gives a, he's not gonna put out for bid, but he'll have an opinion of probable cost, what that infrastructure costs. You divide that amongst all the lots, and then you know basically what is the value of that lot, including the infrastructure. And that becomes what is gifted, so to speak, to the applicant,
Yeah, and I don't think that decision's been made yet, right?
right?
That's where I don't think,
The only discussion we had was the land.
and I think we're probably a long way from figuring that out, but I agree that we have to maybe employ somebody to start figuring this out, but I also see stuff coming through plan that deals with this property, that it isn't even zoned in a certain way yet, so I don't think we're there yet until, I mean, I know I read about R4, I don't think it's decided yet, part of it for municipality, part of it for parks. So I don't think we can worry about hiring somebody to design a plat this moment.
I also think
Until
too,
things are,
that we would have to sign off on that plat. I know that, a previous board member who, was very concerned about how many lots there would be, how many additional homes would be there, how that would, affect Scandia Road and what upgrades we might have to do to Scandia. ZZ's a little bit different. So even if a plat is created, it may not mean that,
well, we should
That's
do it
how
in
many
stages.
lots we
We
want,
get designed in a, I mean, this isn't
Phasing.
56 acres, that 3 years have 400 homes, it's 56 acres over the next 30 years to maybe have that many, or, you know what I mean? It's for our future growth and for affordable and family housing. But I still don't know that, I mean, I think there has to be a plan and a thought process on how to do that, and of course, we need experts to help us do that. But I also don't think you have that property zoned yet, and know exactly.
I think we go to,
Yeah,
It'll
it's
start
about to,
next week.
yeah,
And,
public
and
hearing.
when you guys, your thought is, and this is maybe too much information for this meeting and not that one. But is it all gonna be zoned exactly the same? Because it's a big piece of property. I mean, I know some is gonna be municipality, and some is gonna be parks, but the rest of it's just gonna be our fault. And,
I don't know that there's municipal.
well, I thought there was, it read towards where
parks.
where the parks and in the sewer plant, some of that's gonna be zoned governmental, I mean, whatever that was, to preserve some of it, maybe, well, maybe I misread.
Way
Yeah, it's our
back when.
foreign
Yeah,
parks,
it's all-
it's our foreign parks,
Right.
and
Yeah.
What you're talking about, Chad, is exactly what the committee is saying. We need a plan.
Yeah.
You know, we can talk about this forever, but at some point you need a plan. You know, how many, you know, how many lots will there really be there? How are they phased? How is the infrastructure phased? So that they can proceed with the model that they're working.
What's allowed to be built there right now? Nothing, right?
Right now, you
So I
don't have any.
don't, I just don't
individual
think we're here there yet, right? I think we have,
Well,
you
that's what
guys
they're,
gotta do your, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's what they're saying is, can you give us money so that we can have the engineer go out there and develop that plan? Which is gonna take you probably a year. To actually lay out, this is the area we have to reserve for stormwater ponds. This is how much you need for roads. This is how many lots you can fit out there. This is how they should be phased. That's a lengthy process,
Yeah.
involves housing committee and the plan commission. And then, but from there, they will know what is it gonna cost and how many lots does that get divvied up on amongst? See if it's even feasible.
Well, looking at the housing model that you put together from the January 2025 meeting.
The notes, those were just things
The
they
notes,
had discussed.
Right, but I mean, these notes were in a couple different meetings, so you were getting to a point.
They're
So
getting there.
the other thing that, first of all, only about 38 acres are buildable at this point from what we know because of soil. But the other part of it too is that it's not just homes. It's, the other discussion was duplexes and townhomes. That would be rentals, and that we had a couple of discussions that might take a priority, because, and that's a different, it's a different type of lot.
Is that in R
It's a
four?
different,
Do you have that stuff in R four?
If, that would all be in the R4 once it's rezoned, correct?
right.
And it's
So,
units, I'm sorry, it's not just housing, it's units, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
housing.
and these were all, AMI based and so forth, average median income based and so forth, but, in the way that. So I guess my question would be, and I would agree, I don't think we know enough yet, but, that maybe it's a cart before the horse or whatever, but. Wouldn't we have to be a little more specific with, in terms of what we want them to look at? I mean, do we want lots for single family homes? Or do we want lots for single family homes and townhomes, or do we want both? And wouldn't that be
And
necessary?
that's part of that conversation, but they're saying, so you have to have that discussion with the engineer. We need duplex lots, we need townhouse lots, we need residential lots. Right now, there's no money released. They can't have any of those conversations, so they're working on some models saying, now what?
So the problem, another problem. Is that even though we had the 3.5 million in the CIP, granted. To do what they're requesting isn't going to take all of that money. But we're not gonna go and borrow the 3.5 million to get whatever it's going to cost us for an engineering firm to do all of this. So then where do we get that money? It's not in our budget this year.
No, I don't know
So
I'm not sure what it
then
costs to
we're-
get.
That
those
we're
kinds of-
stuck
that
there.
study.
So I think unfortunately, this is a conversation for finance and next year's budget. Because we don't want to start paying back a loan that we may not see any infrastructure for a couple of years yet.
100%. Have you had discussions with firms that are interested in bidding to plan this?
Yeah.
Actually, there was an engineer who did a very preliminary sketch a couple of years ago. And at that time, my commission said, too early, that's gotta go to a housing committee.
Yeah.
But there's no money to hire an engineer.
I know you can't hire one, well, unless we hire a consultant that's gonna work on this project long-term, like in-house. That'd be a great idea, maybe. But if what you're describing seems like you want somebody to go out and draw plans, which means that's a bid thing, right?
Okay, we're looking, correct, it'd be a bid thing, it'd be a couple $100,000. To say, let's wait until we can get a loan on the full 3.5. I look at it and say, why would you borrow all 3.5 if you're not gonna need all 3.5 for a couple of years? Why not just release, let's say 500,000 of it, so you can get this initial work done, so you can get it laid out. So you know what you need.
But that's a whole nother model. It's not a go bond. Is it a short-term loan? Is it local? Is it, finance would have to know all of that criteria. What's the payment schedule? How does that fall? When's the first payment?
And that is something for finance. The housing committee right now is saying, look, we're at a stalemate. We need some money released here to have a plan drawn so we can go to the next step. So if the board thinks, yeah, let's release money for engineering, then it goes to finance to figure out how that's funded, I guess, but.
So is it just a guess, 500,000, or do you think it's 300,000?
Well, we do know from the initial work that was done by the engineer that, and remember, we had talked about applying for that pro grant at that time. And we knew what the cost of engineering was at that time. The initial engineering design, don't quote me on this because I don't have the plan in front of me, I think was about $220,000. And then there was extra if you were gonna actually install the ponds right away and do some of that work. So it was not over $500,000.
I guess I'd also like to see from the housing committee, what it is that's actually being proposed there. What is this, is gonna be single family housing, what is this gonna be townhouse? I understand that.
Apartments?
Yeah, well, I feel like I'd like them to come to us
breakdown.
and present at least where they're at now.
Well, and they have talked, it is a mix that they've talked about, that is in their minutes. They can't tell you how many units, because they don't know how much they've got, right? You start with your 56, you take out that land that cannot be served by sewer and water. We take out the land that has contaminated soils. We take out our 500-foot buffer around the wastewater treatment plant, unless we give ourselves a variance. We have to take out land for stormwater ponds and roads. That is what's left. Okay, how much land do I have left now? And how is that divvied between duplexes, townhomes, single family homes?
Is that the 38 acres or is that just, we haven't figured it out yet?
The 38, so that would all come out of the 38, because
I
the
see.
18,
Yeah, all right.
the 18 acres is what we can't touch because we don't have
Yeah,
the.
okay, so there's still more to come out of the 38.
So they can't even tell you because they don't know how much land you have.
See,
What about this?
So it
Yeah.
needs to go to finance.
well, I agree, but I think everything you're telling us is great information, but I think that should be a packet that we're getting out of them, like a presentation, all those details, so we have time to really look at that a little bit more. I mean, I thank you for giving me all this information, but I didn't have any of it coming into this, you know what I mean?
Well, what about this idea? Because what I was looking at was like, what did Sturgeon Bay do and what was their model, right? Just the model, forget the finances. Like, was it a public-private thing? Was it, because it seems that in these, because you talk to a lot of people. I mean, you talk to Portside, you talk to Telluride, you talk to, oh shoot, I forget.
Crested Butte.
Yeah, Crested Butte, who's been in the business of trying to figure out housing for 20 years.
Talk to that guy in Oshkosh.
Yeah, so I'm wondering though, if in the process, if it's possible for, and you've got some really knowledgeable people, you've got Marissa Downs. You have someone from Habitat, and you have someone who's very familiar with the funding arm of it. If you could say, as a, for your village, doesn't need to be one model. These are two models to consider. This is one, and this is whatever the finances are. This is what you should consider, knowing, to a certain extent what the parameters are, because I think our big goal was to have it be affordable. And there would be,
In perpetuity.
right, and then of course there's always like, well, what is that, what's affordable, but nonetheless, because those were with Portside, those were very specific conversations with him. And what he was able to do in Sturge and how much it cost and so forth. And so just two models like that said, okay, because I don't think the village wants to be in the business of developing anything. They want to say, here's the, here you go, this is what we're gonna give you. So we'll give you the land, but we can't do the infrastructure. We'll give you the land, or we can do part of the
Well,
infrastructure where you gotta do the road.
And that model, I think, has got to be figured out, just because maybe some of them are market-based to help offset. one at this price, I'll pay for three at this price.
Right.
You know, I'll set three, like, I
Right.
mean, I think that model has to, I mean, and I agree, we gotta start figuring that out, I'm not.
Patrice, you have something you wanna?
Also,
I do, yeah, I'm on this committee, what I wanted to say was, does the board need from us, like, drawings of the models, like, do you need drawings of the homes that we're trying to propose?
No.
Or, because we
No.
are talking about combination, affordable,
Right.
small homes,
Mhm.
apartments and townhouses,
Mhm.
all of those are on our plate
Got it.
that we're looking at.
Right.
But we don't have a map or the size of the lots, and we
No.
don't have any of that stuff.
I don't think we need that. I think we need to figure out how we're gonna pay for it. And how we're gonna pay for it as a municipal. Not we're gonna pay for it, but what's the optimum, because these are our taxpayers that are paying for it, right? We already paid for the land.
Can,
So how do municipalities?
can someone, maybe Denise, you can explain to me, we have 3.5 million in the CIP. So that's monies in the big plan for the future, and that's money that we have to actually borrow.
Yes. And it was scheduled to be borrowed last year, and then they
24.
kicked it to this year to say they'd
Because,
borrow it this
yeah,
year.
'cause we were trying to pull back,
So my,
Bridget,
Sorry,
your turn.
I know I'm coming in totally late to the game on the housing project. Can someone just give me like a quick minute synopsis on where like, is the push coming from the board wanting to create housing for employees and families they think are coming in? Or did the public come in and has requested all of these times, we need more affordable housing, do something about it, and this is the response? Like, where's the push coming from?
Both,
both really. It's a
Okay.
response to multiple people saying that I can't afford to live here.
yeah, three.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't, it's not just mine. I can't afford.
And I
to
think, didn't
rent here either.
Stantec do like a huge study
Right,
of what's affordable and what's needed and what's not needed?
we had a
Alright.
housing study done, we had people come to us, we actually had a meeting, for anyone wanting to buy a home in Sister Bay, and we had 70 families come say, I want to buy, but I can't afford to buy.
Right, and I went through and read most of that. So I guess my question is, I get that you can go and hire an engineer and they would need to plan out the roads and stormwater, all the things. But we already have this huge study done. Why don't, it feels like we're giving them all the power. Like, why don't we go to them and say, we want these things based on these studies we've already done? We need this many homes. We need this many townhouses. Can you make this work and fit this in the plan? Like, if I'm doing a big project, I'm going to the firm and saying, I want this, 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 and this. Show me how you can make that work. And if they can't, then we go through options rather than
Well-
saying, hey, come up with what you think we should.
Except
You know
that we
what I
would go to
mean?
them and say, we want this at a certain price, and they would come back to us and say, what else do I have to pay for? Do I have to pay for the dirt? Do I have to pay for infrastructure? Do you know what I mean?
But I'm not just saying a certain price, like, if you want 10, 15 single family homes, if you want 15 townhomes, like you have all of this information that's been collected now. I feel like the housing committee should have a pretty good idea of that information on what number of things are needed
They
to
know.
put in this plan.
They know what's needed, but they don't think it'll all fit on that property, so it's like, we need somebody to tell us what will fit on that property. And then they have looked at the various models and they have decided to go with a model where the village actually has the engineer draw it out. The village puts out the infrastructure and the village installs the infrastructure. And then the buyer of the lot contracts with the selected builder who's under a development agreement to build. Let's say you select a builder who agrees to build 20 homes within a certain price range. And then he offers contracts to the people that are going to be building. So they have that model figured out. They've been through that. They've looked at, as Louis said, various models. They've got it down to one.
Yeah.
And they're at the point that to say, we can't tell you how many we can offer. We can't tell you the price we can offer. We can't tell you what discount we can offer because we don't know what it's going to cost to develop that whole site.
So,
And have we already voted to just, yes, this project is happening, we're gonna do all the infrastructure for it, like, has that already been voted on?
No, and that's why they're like, we're kind of as far as we can go until we know if we have some money to lay this out and take it to that next step.
We approved the SIP,
Mhm.
we approved the dollar amount for the SIP. And then the SIP is a plan, it's a capital improvement plan. The check isn't written, nothing, it changes.
Right, cause I remember sitting in on that meeting and it was, we can approve this SIP with these numbers, but that doesn't mean we have to borrow that money. That just means
Right.
this could happen, cause
Right.
there was a lot of, I feel like there was a lot of objection in the audience to several of the major projects and the amounts of money that were going towards them. So I wanna make sure we're just not being like, oh yeah, well, it was in the SIP, so now
Yeah.
we're gonna give away 3.5 million in tax.
Well,
That
the other
doesn't
thing
mean-
too is though, about how we can get granting and so forth, if that money's in there, right?
Let me get back to that.
Sorry.
But we are committed, at least the previous board was committed to housing. To help our community, which helps all. The village sometimes can't find employees. Because they can't afford to live here. Our utilities director. Finally bought a home an hour away.
Right, and I know it's a problem.
So and if we don't have. If this community does not have the workforce. To have all the employees and all the businesses that we so enjoy, no matter what they might be. Sooner or later, you're gonna have a much bigger problem. So I can't, I guess I don't know for a fact that this current board is still committed to this project. But the previous one was, and maybe that's a conversation that we have to have. But the final thing that I will say is that this needs to be a top priority. Needs to be on the finance committee's next agenda. And we need to start talking about the actual dollar amount that you would need to get this information so that you guys can move forward. And how we work that into next year's budget.
So back when this was going on the first time we were talking about this, we had hired out to get an attorney that was an expert in deed restrictions, etc. Whatever happened there? Did we figure that out? Did we make decisions? Did we do that to the land yet?
Actually, that's, sorry, part of what they discussed in there.
No, I'm great that they discussed, but is what's been told to us by the experts? And what have we done to go down that path? Because really, that's a big thing.
Sure. So we know we can have the deed restrictions on, and that's why the model that the committee came up with is the village owns that land or that lot until it's time to transfer it
Yeah,
over, because if it's our lot, we can put the deed.
I know
restriction
that.
on.
I'm
Yeah.
just wondering where you're at with the knowledge of it, where we are at with, are we gonna deed restrict all 38 acres or whatever it ends up being? Has that decision been made? Are all of them gonna be, basically rent controlled / mortgage, like housing trust? Or is it gonna be part of that? Like, have they got, how far they've gotten in that philosophy, on what they're gonna do with the land?
Yeah, yes, they have decided that every lot will have the deed restriction on.
Like 38 minimum rental, et cetera, right? Like, I could buy one and rent to an
Well,
employee,
there was a legal.
right? Because we don't want vacation rentals there.
No short-term
Yeah.
rentals would be there. They've had discussions about a certain number being held for the partnership or habitat. They've had discussions about, okay, if we can offer it to somebody who's gonna build apartments, what does that look like? Versus home ownership, they've had discussions on building homes that are rented out, and they have selected not to do that. Their recommendation, again, this is recommendation that goes in a model. But theirs is home ownership, because it is a workforce housing model. They wanna have it, they don't want somebody to come in and buy homes and rent them out and make money off of them. They want them to actually be, if they're single family homes.
What about employee housing though? We had talked about that back in the day about businesses buying homes, having models for to have something in a more J1 form to not take away homes on Spring Road like we're doing now.
We did talk about
Yeah.
that, and we actually had meetings on that. We reached out to businesses, we had a very, very low response rate on that. And then when the board handed it to the housing committee, they said, at this time, do not focus on the J1 visa housing, but we are tackling workforce housing first. So that's what this group has been tasked force, was not the J1.
And that's great, but I mean, to not have anything thought about for that housing, it just means it's gonna be in other parts of our community.
It has been thought out quite a bit about that.
Well, I'm not saying not thought, I didn't mean to say you guys haven't thought and discussed it, but to not have it in there. I feel like then it's just gonna continue to be where it is, which is fine if that's what
I
the bill
think
wants.
what they had decided, or through their conversations is that almost all the businesses have already purchased homes to fulfill that.
I understand because we had to, but it doesn't mean if there was something else that existed that we wouldn't be willing to make those homes back in the market.
So,
To have something there that could be built more specifically for the needs of a seasonal worker. It's just a big discussion point that we had kind of agreed on back in the day, but
Our main focus was on providing affordable housing so that families that work here can buy.
and I agree
or
with
a
that,
Townhouse or duplex or
Yeah.
whatever.
but at some point, that's still that same house.
Yeah.
You know?
But
So it's,
also in the big plan is, well, providing apartments and maybe the J1s or the business ones can rent that. I don't know. But it's a need, and it's something that we need to work on and, I don't think this should be put on the back burner. If we could even just do steps, like we could have some money for just getting the engineer or a drawing of how this thing's gonna look, and then we can go by that, and if we can just have, even just if this takes 10 years, whatever, but if we could just do it by steps, just to get the ball rolling, but we're at the point in this committee that we have exhausted all ideas and possibilities and plans, because if we don't have any funding at all, we're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
We're stuck right now.
I think that what we need to understand, or what I would need to understand is. In broad strokes, what is it that we're looking at? Are we looking at doing a bunch of single family homes, like a percentage breakdown? I understand you're not gonna know the exact number of units, but broad strokes, what is that? And then also, what is the actual financial need that you're asking for? Because I don't think anybody here thinks we can put $3.5 million out this year. I don't think that that'd be a good idea. So to have, and I understand you're not gonna have a very precise amount, but to have more of an idea than some portion of the $3.5 million. I also think it'd be great if we could take all this information the housing committee has come up with and put it into a report for the board. So they say, okay, this is what we've come up with. This is what we found. We don't have all the answers here, but these are the answers we do have, because you guys have done a tremendous amount of work.
And it has been compiled.
and you do have a lot of answers, by the way, which is great. I appreciate that. I agree with Nate. It would be nice to have it in that form.
Sure, I know the document Louise was holding up there
I
is,
printed it, so take a look at
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
but it's
that's
in the
where
last
they're
5
at so
minutes.
far.
Okay.
Everything they've discussed and what they've said, yes and no to.
So do they just want to find out how much it costs to hire an engineer?
They want money for engineering to take it to the next step.
To start.
But can they
planning.
get a bid for an engineering bid, so we know how much it will cost? So the board could, or finance could approve that?
They did have one originally when they were working on the program, and then, like I said, I think offhand it was like 220.
To your point, Bridget, like, what are we asking them for? We're saying we want housing out there. Is that we should ask more specifically, this is what we want to see out there. Can we do this? So I think that we need to understand what we're asking for from that engineer.
In my mind, it's, and again, I put on the planning hat, says, this is how much land we have. How many lots of this size can we get out here? Now, we know you have to have stormwater ponds, we know you have to have roads. What is left and how many lots are there?
What
But
kind
the
of lots are we
lots
asking
would
for?
be very different size, whether it's that R4 single family
Or-
that we're having the
Townhouses
public
and
hearing
apartments.
on,
Yeah.
or an apartment.
Yeah,
But won't that affect, what was that?
the size of a lot.
I
and
know
how
one
that's up.
conversation we had with Portside, they said you can't make the lot too small because then the attached garage doesn't fit.
Right,
So there's all this stuff that we have to consider.
and that's why Plan Commission changed the zoning and is having that public hearing.
And they did tell us too what size lots we need for apartments or townhouses.
Yeah.
So that committee knows what size they need.
I just, what are we asking for a breakdown? I mean, do we want half of it to be apartments? Do we want half of it to be single family homes? I'd like to have it be 0 single family homes and all.
Would it? I haven't looked at that housing study probably since shortly after it was done a couple of years ago by Stantec. I mean, does it state in there what the percentage is? Because there was also the needs analysis that, you know, that there are numbers that came out of that housing analysis on what we should have. So is that something that we have to go back and look at and have the housing committee determine, okay, it's 25% this, it's 40% this,
Right.
it's.
But one thing, as I recall, when in the survey, when they were asked, like, what would you like? So a single family home and so forth. You know, what you like and what, I don't think would you like a single family home? What wasn't asked is if it cost 400. If it cost, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The price wasn't attached. Now, and because I think reality has to set in at some point, and so what Portside or anybody else can build us for 11 or 1,200 square foot home with, because I think overwhelmingly wanted 2 or 3 bedrooms, and they went, of course. It just, what can we, what can a builder afford?
What's realistic?
Well, yeah, and so that's a couple of years ago. Not that, I mean.
Well, and I know this may be too much for the village to do, but the thing that Dan Landgraf, the gentleman, the professor from UW-Madison, the housing expert, said, if you guys can just come up with plans of different things, you will have people clamoring to build them. Because right now, I mean, and that's great if you do, that's awesome, because without that, every single one, an affordable home, every single one going through planning commission, it takes away every margin.
No,
that
we
they-
talked about that,
Yeah.
that there would be different models that
Yeah.
would all be pre-approved through plan commission, and if you picked one of those.
Yeah.
Go. right?
And then still maybe an open for others, but would have to go through the plan, is that,
It would just take more time.
and that's fine, and I think you should have both, so that's good. All right, cool.
Right, we would have to do a solicit for bids and then give certain contractors development agreements. One of them already did though, give us, I can't remember, I want to say like maybe 15 different plans. Because we wanted to make sure it would be affordable, and so he was able to tell us, this home is gonna cost, assuming I'm not responsible for the lot or the infrastructure. This home is gonna cost X amount of dollars,
And
so we knew 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms, and what those prices.
And
would be.
even before the building size of R4 has been determined, we have that.
Right. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why we're amending the code is, so we have R4 standards in the code. And they don't allow these very small homes that this builder came up with.
Yeah.
So the plan commission, when they housing committee looked at it and said, your code is preventing people from building, you need to revise it. They made the recommendation to the plan commission, and the plan commission said, yeah, geez, I guess we have to make the lots a little wider, change the setbacks on them, so that we can get these homes, which we saw.
Yeah.
Actually built on these properties. Otherwise, you're gonna have little tiny shacks that nobody's gonna wanna live in.
Yeah.
It was too restrictive.
So do we need housing committee to come back and say, we are looking to do this percentage of these different types of homes, and this is what it's gonna cost us to get an engineer to draw it up, or even submit it to the board or the planning commission?
I think it's gotta we gotta figure out what that cost is gonna be, then it's gotta go to finance to figure out when we can do it, and then we can bring it back to the board. But I think that we do need a little bit more
Information.
more information from
Yeah.
housing. And it's probably information you likely have there, just compiling in a way that we can digest it. Okay. Move on to 8C, firework donation request. Right, Chad? Guys, and
So this came from Kurt. Kurt was at a fire board meeting and then he wrote and said, "Given from Liberty Grove is talking about donating money to the Heck family and he wanted to know if the village would do so as well." And then, Mike, I think you had more. Chad, I don't know if you were involved. in
I was
that
there, I
fire
was
board
there
meeting.
as well, yeah. Liberty Grove gave 10 grand. I think that sounds like a really good number to me too. I don't know how you come up with it. That's something like that.
Mike, and in that,
Sure, I'm not really here to advocate, I mean, obviously, yes, personally, I am. I'm here to support or provide information, really. Yeah, the Liberty Grove, I believe they're meeting again tomorrow, but I believe their plan is to provide some money to the fire department contingency fund to be allowed there, to go from there to the Heck family, donation. But obviously, my position is that, Chris was on a work-related conference for the fire department. And this occurred, and because it's so far away in Indianapolis, it's placed his family at particular difficulty. Because they are now living out in Indianapolis to be around Chris, and he is still too unstable at this time to be moved. So it's one of those areas where, again, I can't ask the village to do it. I mean, I believe Karen, Chad, I support their position. I would like to see donations obviously go to Chris, because I do believe his family is in a very difficult way, but how you make that happen, I can't answer. So, but I can tell you that the family is in need.
Would you like to update?
So, thank you. Denise. So the latest news is Chris had a surgery, approximately 6 days ago. He still had some, build up in one of the ventricles, of the brain. It was not draining properly. And they believe that might have been one of the reasons he has not been able to regain consciousness yet. They did a surgery that basically put an internal drain in his body, and that has shown progress. And now, since the ventricle has drained significantly, Chris is now responding to painful stimuli again. He is opening his eyes if they do a sternal rub or do a knuckle rub, and occasionally he will respond to verbal stimuli as well, but just by opening his eyes at this point.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, you said there's an actual fund that's established.
There are two funds established. There's a Stay Strong to Chris Heck Fund, which is at the Nicolay Bank, and then there's a GoFundMe. My recommendation would be to support the Stay Strong and Nicolay Bank one. That's where we typically recommend that people put a donation if they can. However, obviously the GoFundMe has far better social media impact, so that's why there's the two funds.
So
They
Glad,
are both linked at this point.
I don't know if you have anything to add to it, but I know I had reached out to Randy. I didn't get a response on it, but in the past, we have not been able to donate to an individual person. It had to go to a nonprofit or organization. So that would make sense, to donate to Nicolay, because they have the funds set up. We cannot donate directly to the family.
And as I said, unfortunately, I'm not well versed enough to be able to speak to that. I know it's even from our association that staff, we did a one time and that's it. So I don't know. I don't know from an accounting and from a village and from a town perspective, the best way to do it. All I can be is, again, an advocate for Chris and his family. Again, I know that, again, my view is that Chris, over his period of time as a chief, through grants, time and effort, has given far more than he's ever received back. And I think this is the one time that, as a community, and again, I can't say how to do it, but it would be great to see some support going back towards him.
So the firefighters association was able to give a one-time,
We did, and again, it's, we'll place the accountants when we come across it and figure out through them, but yes, we did.
if we can't figure out another way, could we give to the firefighters association and have that go to?
I'm gonna say at this point, I'm not against it. We have an accountant, that we can speak to, sort of pretty charged about this right now, and we could certainly ask that. Again, I'm not absolutely not against that. I think tomorrow, the town of Liberty Grove, it's on their agenda to kind of do their final stretch on that. Maybe it'd be worth waiting to see exactly how they figure it out. I don't know, again, between the town and the village, if there's a difference in finance committees, I'm sure there is. But I guess tomorrow will be their finalizing of that and seeing how they're gonna figure this out as well. Because it was a problem for them. I agree. And their town was absolutely in the position of, it's, you know, they felt truly sorry and they wanted to do something, but again, I do appreciate the difficulty.
So I think that we need to hear from Randy, ethically, legally, and, if finance is meeting soon, I think it should go to finance, because again, if we're talking a sizable amount of money that is unbudgeted, that needs to be discussed.
So Vlad, let's just say we came out of here, just for argument's sake, that we came out here and said, yeah, we want to allocate this much money towards it. Would we be able to do that? Just that comes from the unallocated funds balance?
Yeah.
Was that, I mean, it's obviously not a good idea to do that for anything, but understanding this is probably a little bit beyond. This is one of those
This
things
is a
that we're
good
doing
idea.
for, yeah.
This is a good idea to do it for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's, in
I know what
general,
you meant, I know what you meant.
generally speaking, it's not something we want to do, but it's raised us to such a level. Maybe, I guess I understand he's wanting to take it through finance and all that. I don't think that we should wait. That's my personal opinion.
You don't think we should get legal advice?
I think we should get legal advice, but I don't think we should roll it through finance. I think we need to make sure we're doing it in a way that's legal, but I don't know that we need to tie it to a finance committee meeting. I don't know how anybody else feels.
I'm just trying to think, back in the day. Somebody asked us for some money for something, and it was a nominal figure, and I think we agreed to it. How did we do that?
There was one about 2-3 years ago, and we were told that we could not give it to the individual, but we could give it to a nonprofit. So if there was a nonprofit associated with it, we could give it to them.
So the one at Nicolay Bank, is that a nonprofit?
No,
Okay,
no, it's connected to the family.
okay.
It might be worth just contacting the community fund and having them set something up.
Like,
Well, they'd have to.
Community foundation, so we can give it to them and they can direct it.
They have to, the hex would have.
Yeah,
Well, somebody can do it on their behalf.
Yeah.
That's what they're paid to do.
I guess in very broad strokes, do we want to give to this? I mean,
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
should match what Liberty Grove is pledging, $10,000.
So
I'll
then,
make that motion. However, it's figured out.
I don't think we have put enough for a motion yet, Chad. I mean, let's
Oh,
just
yeah.
want to make sure we're all on the same page for
I
that.
think it should go to finance, so we know. So they can look at their budget and they can look at their expenses and everything. And we should also hear from Randy.
Yeah, hearing from Randy, but trying to figure out how we can have it passed through a nonprofit.
I mean,
Right.
the last time I looked, and it's been probably at least 10 days, I know that there are serious expenses. Because I donated through the GoFundMe.
So did I.
Before I knew about the one at Nicolay. It was over 100,000. I don't know what Nicolay has accumulated. I mean,
No, that one's a bit tougher. That one, the other people that can get information on that.
oh, okay.
It's not public.
It's not public, okay. So if it's not, and you would have to help us with this,
I can do that.
Michael,
Oh,
is that, no, you don't know what my question
Okay.
is.
Probably not so much, but yeah, go
But
ahead.
thank you for wanting to do whatever. If it took us, a few weeks to work through this, would that be devastating?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I think unfortunately, because of the way the situation is right now, he is still too unstable to be moved. I think the big costs are gonna come, when they have to try to, basically bring him home and make adaptations, stuff like that. So I think right now, because of the fund, because of the amount that was in the GoFundMe, That for a long term, is it gonna be enough? Probably not. But that's why everything helps. But for the short term, they are not hurting right now. It's going to be one of those things that if it takes a little bit longer to get it, that's okay.
Okay,
So should we, I guess understanding that. I think that we should commit to doing it and figuring out the details, but in broad strokes, say, yeah, we're going to do this. As long as we can, as long as there's a mechanism to do it. And then do we want to bring it back to the board then after we have all those details? I mean, that could be another month, but.
I really don't think waiting a month will matter. So, you know.
So when you have your accountant figure this out for you, the
The
fire fund, you guys are a nonprofit, right?
we have a nonprofit association. The fire department is obviously, it's a government entity, but we have an association that we collect funds for. But it's difficult for us as well with that because we are technically not going to be between individual legal, much like you guys.
Yeah, I was referring to the firefighters association, which is.
Yeah.
They get donations through there. so.
Because I mean, just to your point about, he was there on work.
Yeah.
You know, this is,
Right.
if there is a roundabout way for us to give it to you and you give it to them, that seems like the most logical, that there might be a path that way.
And we realized that we would fundraise for Chris directly through the association if
Yeah.
that was a way we did it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And that's one of the things that we get a little wall, but, yeah, the hard part is that we have investigated every avenue of workers' comp and everything else like that, because the injury or the medical illness he sustained is a spontaneous one. It cannot be a workers' comp.
Yeah.
However, he was in a place, so what's the weird part or the awkward part is that because he was on a conference so far away, it has led to serious financial impact on the family,
Yeah.
because he is stuck in Indianapolis now. And now his family, his wife is obviously staying there the whole time, the rest of the family commutes on a regular basis.
So maybe we could ask Liberty Grove, I don't know, if we can communicate with them and see what they're thinking about, I mean, they sound like they're in the same boat.
Yeah, I think if, you know, if the board is inclined to say $10,000 or to match what Liberty Grove gives, let's just take some time and find that creative way to make that happen. Like I said, I've reached out to Randy, I know he's been swamped, but I'll reach out to him again, meanwhile, we'll try and think of some other nonprofit, maybe that it can funnel through. As long as we know the board is, their intent is to do this, we can take it to that next step and figure out how to make that happen.
So, and what about, I mean, I don't know what finance, we don't have a finance meeting scheduled anytime soon.
We don't have one scheduled, but we need to get one scheduled pretty quick here. If finance meets before the board meets again, we'll go to finance with it.
Or it goes back to the board.
If not, we'll
Yeah.
go straight to the board. If you're okay with that.
I think that's what makes sense.
Yeah.
And then if we still have questions about it, and we still feel like we need to go back to finance, but. Let's just plan on addressing it again, so leaving you with the idea that there's general consensus, I think there's actually unanimous consensus. That we should donate $10,000 to this cause, we just need to figure out how we're gonna do it. I guess I should give any board member a chance to speak up if they don't want to do it, to make sure this truly is unanimous. So. I think that's what we leave you with, and then we will revisit this at our June board meeting.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Mike, for all you're
Thank you for
doing.
the update.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for stepping up in this unfortunate situation.
Well, not really. Thanks.
Okay. 8B, liquor license request.
So in the packet was an application for a prorated Class D beer and Class C wine license for One Star Brewers LLC. This is a business that is renting a property at 10440 Orchard Drive. They are here with us tonight. If you have any questions for them. They are looking for a license to be granted now and to come back with renewal application with everyone else in June.
I had a couple questions. I was just curious, Chris Janessi and Scott Watts are the owners, but the agent is going to be
Anna Paulus.
Hannah.
Mhm.
Found that odd, any,
No, it's pretty normal for a manager to have
for a
that.
manager
Yeah.
to have that, okay. And the only thing that I'm concerned about, and Julie or Heidi wrote it in here, is the parking. Because it states with the potential for additional tables to be added on the lawn in the future with zoning approval should it be needed. Because on the map that is presented,
Page 46.
it shows pretty much the whole entire property. And I would feel uncomfortable at this time saying that this is what we're approving when we don't know how many tables may be out there, how much parking.
Well, and that does describe as well, if someone is holding a can of beer, that they can walk around the property. You know, so they're not necessarily sitting with it.
It's pretty standard. Husby's draws their whole property, House does, the Alpine Golf Course does. The Landmark Resort draws their whole property, just to cover them, so if somebody is walking through the parking lot, going to that picnic table, they're kind of covered.
I don't care about other towns, I only care about Hisby's. See, that's the only one you mentioned in Sister Bay.
We draw our whole property on ours every time.
Right, and very small.
Yeah.
Parcel. And
But I think the state code, the statute supports drawing your whole property is what I'm
Okay.
saying. That's going back to my days of going through this process, not knowing anything. It's just pretty standard.
and you concur with that, Heidi?
Yeah, sometimes the premise description I get just says entire property located at this address, which is.
I'd be more interested in their criminal backgrounds before we. That was a joke.
So moved.
Motion by Berto,
Second.
second by Harf, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Revised employee handbook.
Thank you for the novel.
I didn't have to reread this in
Yeah,
detail
it's
because
very
I've read
long.
it so many times.
Sure.
It's well thought out.
This came to us 4 times.
I still have questions.
Fire away. What page?
Did Nate want to introduce?
So we've got the revised employee handbook. It's here that we've gone through and we've.
Is there anything major that was changed that's worth noting?
Like the whole document?
Yeah, the whole document is, there's not like, we couldn't say this is the items that have changed on there. This is.
Let's start with the fact that it needed some major
Update,
changes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
and it's interesting too, because I was asking some other people, like, you know, can I take a look at your handbook? And to the person, every one of them said, oh, our handbook's terrible. To the person, I don't care what industry, because nobody wants to work on a personnel handbook. It's not fun. Anyway, so we went with Julie's help. We went, you know, chapter by chapter, line by line and so forth. I mean, we tried to be very consistent with the verbiage we used. If we use the word employee, it was used consistently. It was, the word staff wasn't used. And also taking a look at, you know, whether it was, state statutes, code of ethics. Yes, it's very comprehensive and hopefully will not need, you know, a lot of updating. And Julie was a big help as it related to, some of the compensation piece. So in terms of not what people made, not their salaries and so forth, but some of the, you know, different circumstances. So I'm open to any and all questions.
I would say if you wanna, what are the highlights of it? We really expanded on the benefits. If it's a state or federal benefit, we included that in there. So the employee looking at the handbook is aware that that benefit is available to them instead of having them dig for it or not know about it. We added a grievance procedure process in there. The village did not have one. We recently had a situation where who fires who, what happens, how do you even file a grievance? So that is all cleaned up in here. So that process is in here, and then of course. The chain of, I shouldn't say chain of command, but when there's an issue with, you know, a supervisor, where does that go? So that's all cleaned up in here. Cleaned up a lot of stuff that maybe didn't meet law, you know, laws changed, so that was changed or cleaned up in here.
There's also like PTO and sick time, which there's certain nuances to that, that is clearly stated and very detailed, so. You know, a person who's hired can, because when a person's hired, they're required to review it and then sign. And say that they've reviewed it and keep it, and they know they have it,
Cleaning up the on-call and callback
Yeah.
section was big.
yeah.
We did have employees, that's always been very controversial in the employee handbook. And we did have employees look at the revised language to make sure they were all okay with that.
Yeah, employees, the managers reviewed this and gave us feedback.
And then even the clothing policy was cleaned up a little bit. So those are the big things I would say.
On page 50. Second paragraph under purpose. Including but not limited to any employee benefit without prior notice.
Your second paragraph, I'm sorry.
Well, it's actually the third paragraph, the second paragraph under purpose, important facts about this handbook,
Yep. Oh, I see it, okay.
including but not
right
limited
to alter change.
without prior notice. Now, does that just, I think I just need clarification. I think I know what you're saying is that the personnel committee can. Well, actually, a benefit would probably be through finance and the budget. And so that would be a conversation, through the budgeting process that.
Right, we aren't taking it out of the hands of,
So that's what means without prior notice.
without prior notice is for the employee.
I know,
Yeah.
but they will know that it's in the process of being discussed. I have issue with without prior notice.
So the way I read this is, you know, changing this takes action of the board. But we're not gonna give every employee notice, hey, this is going to the board and any change. We're not giving them that notice. I will say, however, we did do this. So this was sent to all managers and asked to share with all of their staff because. You know, we wanted to make sure all staff were on board with these changes and not be taken by surprise. But this is saying, hey, it could happen that this just goes straight to the board and you may not get a notice or kick at the cat. Certainly,
I have a
good
little
man.
problem with that. And then the next sentence after that, it is to the employee's advantage to follow the personnel committee and board of trustee meeting agendas and minutes to be aware of potential changes being discussed. I think that's ridiculous. I think there should be a notice, whether it's in their paycheck or something, that the employee personnel handbook is being reviewed. As simple as that. I don't
It's
think.
not, that's not what is being reviewed. The policy, there is a policy that's being reviewed. You know what I mean? That's what this states is that there are parts of the policies that could be reviewed and changed. So is that what you're suggesting? That we give them notice of when a policy might change, which could be related to?
An employee benefit, a policy change,
Right,
I
policy
think
could
they
be-
should be notified. I don't think it should be up to them. To be looking at the personnel committee's agendas.
So,
I don't.
so this is kind of a cover ourselves in here. But Denise, I don't think that's a big deal to add that in there because it is good management anyway to say, to let the employees know when it's changing. We did that already. I don't think that's that difficult to say. When this is being revised, employees will get notice.
So the language would go from what?
I guess we did do exactly what you're concerned about not
Right.
happening, so.
Right, but here it is saying, and you may have boards in the future seeing that it's very thorough. And probably will not need a lot of changes in the
So instead
future.
of without prior notice, some kind of language that says with prior notice, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Just notification of,
I got you.
I just think
I'm just trying to figure out
notification
The
is
text and how to say
the
it, you
word.
know, okay.
Yeah, I think attempts will be made to ensure all employees are aware of pending
Yeah.
changes to this policy.
Okay. Okay,
Well, the only thing I would say is, does that open us up to say if we make a change and we didn't get it to every single employee, would our policies be able to be challenged then?
Well, and that's why I think we say attempts, right? Because I mean, we do that like with legal notices, right?
Mhm.
We attempt to notify if we miss somebody. Sorry, but we attempt and we make it very clear that we're putting that effort out there to notify them.
as far as the next sentence goes, the employee's advantage to follow the personnel committee and board of trustees meetings and be aware of potential changes. I would say to be, just to be made aware of what's being discussed. I would recommend that to the staff anyway, but nonetheless.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
If
It's
that
not a
other
requirement,
if that
it's just a
other
suggestion.
sentence is
Yeah.
added, then I'm okay
Yeah.
with that sentence.
Because, yeah, none of the managers, well, depending on what's discussed, would come to a board meeting necessarily. Certainly Eric's at all the parks meetings. And personnel, typically they wouldn't come, but it's still a good idea to kind of be in the loop. Okay,
But they have jobs to do.
right.
I,
But we encourage our residents to.
I was gonna say, I think that the very sentiment that people say, well, out in the public, that they should go and read these, read the packets and all that, is the same thing we're saying here. You know, it's the same concept, but I understand it's a different group of people, you've got employees
Right.
versus residents,
Totally
but
understand
it's the
that,
same concept, so.
but skimming in.
I agree with what you're saying about expecting the employees to do that, but I think we should also give our residents a little bit
It's
of
a
grace.
suggestion.
Once in a
Okay.
while.
And just because you put it in the handbook doesn't mean they're going to do it or have to do it.
No, it's
You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
they're gonna read this and we're like, okay, I
Here's
care
what's
about my
here.
time
Right.
off, I'm gonna
They
sign.
read it once, they signed it, they'll never look
Yeah.
at it again.
Right.
And then they'll go when
No
something
offense.
comes up, go, oh, was that in there?
You're like, it was,
Yeah.
but.
Um, Page 53. Sexual harassment, the last bullet point. In such circumstances, the uninvolved employees must file a related report with their immediate supervisor. But it doesn't, but what if it's the supervisor? Then
Yeah.
it should say administrator.
The uninvolved employees must file a related report. Is that what you're?
Yeah,
I mean, we reference that other places where the supervisor's involved, you go to.
Right, but it
Yeah.
doesn't say that here.
Yeah, I think we changed that language in other, you're right, we did.
Is
It
that
did
something-
say in other places.
Yeah, is that the ones that's in parentheses?
Yes,
Okay, in such circumstances, the uninvolved employees must file a related report with their supervisor, and I think the language before, or we could use either personnel committee or personnel, I think we use personnel committee maybe?
So we
chair,
can, so it's either gonna be the
Yeah,
village administrator, or if the village administrator is involved, then it's gonna be the personnel chair.
okay, so
yeah,
not,
or if you wanted to go to the immediate supervisor and it isn't the immediate supervisor, that's the problem. It could say immediate supervisor or administrator or personnel, whichever.
Well, to
works.
be
Which,
consistent-
you know, well, I know, but it just could be complicated. Gives them options.
yeah. I think to be consistent, we should do the village administrator personnel committee or whatever.
Well,
Yeah, that's fine.
but I mean, do we want somebody to, if the immediate supervisor is not involved, then if we want every employee to be the administrator? Or do we? You're saying at this point, we want everybody to go straight to the administrator.
I would say just use the wording that you used elsewhere for consistency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's likely that that immediate supervisor is going to go to the village administrator.
Correct.
Yeah, and I don't think they have an issue with that, because the way this was worded originally, it did not say village administrator. And that's one of the things, one of the managers said, they're like, well, I don't feel appropriate going to a personnel committee to talk about this, why can't I talk to the village administrator?
Right.
So I don't. think
Yeah, they're not going to feel comfortable coming. to-
No, I think they'd prefer to go staff if they can.
Absolutely.
Page 56. Gifts and gratuities, the last sentence. If the items given away to attendees and offered to all participants at an event exceeds $50, acceptance of it shall be respectfully be declined, returned, or given to another. $50 is nothing. That's a
We
pretty,
talked about 50
pretty
bucks.
low
It was
bar.
$20.
The original personnel, to tell you how great it was 20
Is it
bucks.
per person
So,
or
From
total?
1972.
Well, I don't know, but you know, that's why it changed.
Because like Fall Fest, if we give a bunch of gravy burgers and food, and granted, we could say our cost is less than that, but retail is way more than that.
Well, do you wanna say $100?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So it would say wherever it says 50 in this paragraph. I think this is the only place where we did. Where there was a dollar amount, I think. It would say 100.
I mean, it's talking about you're at an event, you're at.
Okay.
You know, you, at conference or something, and you have to say, well.
Has
the board is
anybody,
really
and this
stingy.
is maybe getting in too much in the minutia, but have you ever been invited to like a national conference or any other staff where like a hotel room has been offered?
No.
No.
Well, I've never been to, I've never been.
Okay, because I was gonna say, if that's ever offered, we should accept the free hotel room for our staff.
No, but you'll go to a conference and you throw your card in a fishbowl and they draw.
And you might win something there.
You have to turn it down.
I think it should be, yeah, that would be cool. I
I
mean,
mean, I think if you're for sure at a conference,
if it's over 50, it must be, you must tell someone,
Well, what if you're at a conference and a
you know,
vendor
and then we
or
could
a
say, oh,
contractor
you want a duffel
wants to
bag?
buy you dinner?
well,
You're at
they're
a
trying,
conference and a vendor or a contractor wants to buy you dinner.
I think you have to look, in that situation, I think you have to look at it. You know, it's kind of like when we recuse ourselves from meetings, you have to look at it and judge for yourself. Is this,
Yeah.
do I even deal with this vendor? Would I even feel compelled to favor this vendor? You know, your staff usually doesn't get to decide who your vendors are. Right?
No.
Things go out to bid, it's your board who's
Yeah.
usually
True,
deciding, so.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
But it's
as
worth
somebody
seeing
that was
people.
in that role that would not be the one that would decide, but would, you go out there and you gather the information. When you present it, you certainly are going to say, well, I think this is the best one. You still have a decision.
It doesn't
influence.
prevent somebody
Well,
from saying, hey,
but-
let me buy you
But
dinner.
can't we just word something where it says if it's over this amount, you must report it to your
I think-
administrator? Because again, if
$100.
somebody got a dinner.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to add up to $50, you know what I mean? And I would hate for somebody to get in trouble for that.
All
Vlad?
right, Vlad, what would you think?
Just recently, somebody offered a gift basket. So I declined, but I asked.
Offered a what?
A gift
Gift
basket.
Oh, gift basket.
So, but I asked if there's a way to have a discount towards whatever. I'm not gonna name who it was or whatever. They're like, oh, let us think about it. They get back to me like half an hour, I'm like, yeah, we can give you a discount. So the gift basket turned into discount.
Okay, is that okay? That's okay, I guess.
Well, in this case, it's a discount for the entire village, so he didn't
Oh.
benefit.
Oh, yeah.
It
Oh, so
saved
you didn't
the
say
village.
that.
Yeah, you're negotiating, that's pretty good.
Who is it?
Yeah, you don't get it, Louise.
Yeah.
So $100, and then if it's more than that, yes, you can accept it, but you have to report it.
Yeah, it has to be reported, and then if we view it inappropriate, then we can say that's inappropriate, you
Right.
need to return that, whatever.
Yeah, and so
What do you think of
wanna-
that, Julie?
I think that's fair, but who's it reported to? Supervisor?
finance,
Finance?
I mean, the finance director.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
So do we want to include the text that says or given to a nonprofit serving Sister Bay?
Yeah, I think that needs to go away.
Yeah, okay. Be declined or should be reported. Okay. Right. You know, this is coming from you now, so you can read it all over again.
No, you can make those changes.
No, let's read it again.
So good.
So much fun.
So I was
Very thorough, by the way,
Oh, you're
guys.
so welcome.
a little surprised on page 57. Drug and alcohol-free workplace. And I know you're including it in there, but I think in today's world where we are, you need to call out THC. It's everywhere.
It's a drug, Denise.
I know, but so, I know.
what we're saying is alcohol-free too.
It says alcohol-free and drug. THC in the drinks, you mean?
But then you can do Delta 9.
Oh, for
I
heaven's
I guess,
what I'm saying?
I guess
Like, where do you go?
what I hear you say, Denise, is people, like, one of the problems they've got in some of the transportation industry is people will always fail their drug test. They're not necessarily doing drugs on the job, but they may fail drug tests. But I don't think we're actually really talking about, we're saying while you're working.
Yeah, I get that. I get that, because I told Julie a few weeks ago, I had gotten a whole case of samples of THC drinks. I was
Yeah.
having a ball.
Yeah,
They knock you out a little bit, don't they? I tried one.
well, depends on how much is in there, yeah, if it's 5% or 10%.
All I did was taste
Yeah,
one sip and
probably the
I
10%.
passed away. But,
What number?
I know it's included in there and other drugs. I was just wondering, did you wanna?
But don't we, I'm
How
serious.
can we call it
don't
out
we-
differently? I
When we
would,
say drugs, intoxicants, alcohol, narcotics, or any other controlled substance, doesn't that kind of take everybody
Is
in?
THC a controlled substance?
THC?
some forms of it.
Well, in some states it is.
Yeah.
It's not,
But is it technically a controlled substance?
It depends on what,
And if
depends
you're
on what it's
drinking
in.
it, what if you're eating a gummy? Well, there's so many different. I
well,
just
what's a
wanted-
controlled substance? Give me an example.
I don't know the definition. I didn't look that up. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Chad.
No, is alcohol considered a controlled substance? Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm not trying to catch you. I'm just asking.
But I think to answer your questions, it depends on the level of THC and what it is that you're consuming.
Or Delta.
Yeah,
Or
it does.
9.
It depends on it depends on the level, how much is in it, basically.
I don't need
The whole thing
There's a lot of
confuses me.
hills that I'll die
It's
on.
just
This
so
is
nice
not
when it
one
was
of
just
them.
pot.
Denise,
But-
what number is,
Oh,
what
that
number are you
sounds good.
referring to? Where?
Page 57.
Yeah, okay, so
Drug
you're,
and
it's
alcohol
regulated by a
workplace.
government
She's
agency, so
saying
alcohol
maybe
is
it should
controlled.
specify
THC is a
as well.
question mark in
Might not
Wisconsin
technically
because of
be-
Oh, yeah.
the Delta, there's certain strains.
One conversation at a time.
Sorry,
Either side go.
you guys.
Oh, sorry, I was just, she was wondering where we were.
Yeah, lost.
So,
Page 57 now.
I,
so
it's,
what-
in Illinois, it is very much a controlled substance. In Wisconsin, it's very much a gray area.
Yeah.
what would you like to amend in there? Because I'd be open to it, but what is it you think we should, how we should?
I just think you should have the word THC. That's all. And from what I found out, talking to the salesman that I forgot to mention, is
Like
that,
Termini?
no, actually, it wasn't him. Another salesman, gave me the whole background on the farm bill, how this is legal in Wisconsin. How they manufacture it, most of it's coming out of Minnesota, how it skirts the law through the
Yeah.
farm bill. And how long it actually stays in your system, after. So, yeah, you can drink it at night to sleep,
Board
de-stress.
meetings?
Or board meetings and no one will know. Yeah,
Maybe just
my whole
say-
demeanor
Sure,
would change,
sure,
Louise,
yeah,
so
sure.
I'm not drinking it here.
Agua fresca.
If we have it covered by the words or other substances which can impair performance and judgment, even if residual when they are.
That's what I'm saying. It is covered. I'm just asking, do you want to call it out? Because it is the thing. It is the thing right now.
I mean, okay, to your point. Alcohol is called out and that is a drug. But it's a controlled substance. And I think. Calling it out because it is a controlled substance at some level in Wisconsin isn't a bad idea.
That's why.
You know what I mean? Like, so out of that, I get it,
Maybe
I
after
don't care.
drug and alcohol, they include or control substance, blah, 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 including but not limited to, and then list your like top 5. So it covers those couple things you were talking about.
Well, basically, it's just THC and Delta 9 too.
Well, I don't know.
Just, that's all THC, it's just some.
I wouldn't know.
I would agree with Bridget
I
on what you
aged out
just
of
said, that we should. Just what you said.
I think the more we go in this, that sounds good, but like. There's many narcotics that are prescribed by doctors that are controlled substances
Sure.
and legal.
True.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like countless, I don't even,
Well, it doesn't
so,
talk about prescriptions in here.
That are scripts that
Yeah.
you're allowed to, you have to take at work.
Right.
but if you take a controlled substance, being a medical prescription, that isn't yours, it's still a controlled substance.
Right.
It's just not yours. So that's what I'm saying, maybe it's fine the way it is.
When I prepare for board meetings, I was like, okay, there's gonna be something I'm just not gonna
This
see
is it.
coming that's
This
gonna
is it.
come up. This is
Yours
this
is
one. This is it.
Right.
So far, this is it.
Blame
Right
Denise.
on page 57, okay.
I don't think we need to change it. I think
That's
it's
fine.
covered, but I don't have it.
That's fine. I'm not dying this hill.
Yeah, next week we're gonna have somebody come in. High on THC and we're gonna regret it. Okay.
58, number 5. Employees may not use any alcohol within 8 hours following an on-duty accident. Just curious. What is,
I don't remember that, to tell you the truth.
Oh, maybe in case you get tested or
Yeah.
questioned.
That is,
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
something that
It's a
happens.
it's a legality thing, like,
Yeah.
Oh,
because say you were drinking and then you went home and then you, oh, I better have some that, you know. You better not have put any in your system to
oh,
I
cover
think that's
Yeah.
pretty
that you
standard.
had an
Okay,
accident, you know what I
that
mean?
makes
That's, yeah, that's,
that
got it.
makes sense.
It's just if you're in an accident and you have, could
That's what it-
question
yeah.
within a certain
On
amount of
duty,
time.
yeah.
I've never had a speeding ticket, so I don't know anything about an accident.
well, I mean, this could be a safety accident.
Yeah,
This is not necessarily
I'm gonna give,
anything criminal.
I wanna give cousin Bobby a call and have him watch out for you.
Page 60, number 14.
I know, hey, we're gonna explain. You tell her who asked to put this in here.
An employee who was a former state employee.
Yeah.
Said,
You
know,
can figure
why
out who
isn't
this
it-
is. Yep.
So,
I asked, I
No.
did.
I don't have a problem with it.
Ah.
I have a problem with at half a tank.
Oh, you want,
I want a quarter of a tank. Good God, you know how much wasted time that is every time a vehicle gets to
Well,
half a tank?
And I think in a bigger geographic area, half a tank makes sense.
Makes the
But
most
in Sister
Sister
Bay.
Bay?
You can drive back and forth across Sister
It
Bay.
is a waste of time.
Under the E a couple times.
Yeah.
I mean,
figures,
okay, quarter tank.
quarter tank.
quarter tank.
I thought it was because there's somebody, you know, like Yacht Works. There's one guy who fills all the trucks because every truck he gets into is empty because no one else fills them. That can be
I thought
irritating.
for sure it was somebody from Parks that was pissed because every time they got in the trunk, it was him. It wasn't.
But at some point, you start doing it on purpose.
61. Third paragraph. With the exception of the utilities department, the term on-call does not imply the need to remain constantly available for contact by phone or the need to remain in close proximity in the workplace. Does that mean that they can be on call, but they're in Green Bay?
Yeah, so like if you have a parks, it's gonna snow, the Parks Department employee is on call. They come in, they clear it out, they can go to Green Bay or whatever. But whereas if it's a utilities employee, they have to stay, apparently their rules are they have to stay there. They cannot.
Yeah,
leave
I know
there.
that about utilities.
So,
You want them to be closer? Is that what you mean?
I don't care about utilities.
No, the others. You
I was
want-
just
But that's-
asking, can they go to Green
But that's what
Bay
that
if they're
would
on
mean.
call? And I guess it does.
that's why they're not getting paid the extra $25 too.
Okay.
Green Bay's a lot closer when you speed in these.
I don't go there, so I don't know.
Here's the speed. That's what I was getting at.
I saw you driving there one time.
Although with the new car, I speed all the time.
Yeah.
That's accidentally. Page 63. Okay, first bullet point. No more than 80 hours of compensatory time, herein referred to as the maximum accumulation cap, may be accumulated in the employee's bank per calendar year. I've had issue with this for years. Because you could have. An employee is not being able to bank anything for when they retire except 80 hours that then the village has to pay them out for, you know, like the check that we wrote to Janelle. Okay. I think that's horrible. The village is saying to them that we're only gonna pay you for 80 hours, no matter when you decide to leave, or if you stay your whole career here and retire, you have to work until you're 65 to then get on Medicare.
You're confusing this with paid time off. Comp time is different. We've had this discussion before.
She was ready for you.
On
Denise.
to page 54. God bless you, Heidi. Crap, that's nice.
It's so nice when people.
Okay, but it's still the same for paid time off.
So paid time off is allowed to accumulate year after year. It carries forward. Comp time does not. We were just saying that at
But I
the end of the year, when you pay out the comp time, we don't want to pay out 120 hours of comp time in the one check at the end of the year, to those folks. But paid time off is accumulative over years.
Okay, that, and are we, see, the state does, I think, comp time. If you can accrue the state,
Possible.
well, all of it, that, your sick leave, all kinds of things, I think accrues.
I think the state, if I remember, allows, I think the law allows us up to 240 hours of comp time,
Okay,
and the committee had decided 80. I think Louise, do you remember, was it 120 and we dropped it down to 80?
Yeah.
Because of the amounts that we've been paying on.
mhm. Are we budgeting? For that? Well.
Don't we have to almost keep it separate?
It's been killing our budget is what it's been doing
Because we're not budgeting for it.
but we also don't know. I mean,
You budget and you stick that money away every time, and I don't know what a financial nightmare that might be for the bookkeeping part of it. But as you see, somebody's starting to accumulate comp time. You know, if they worked an additional 3 hours this week for whatever reason, that money should be immediately put into an account, and we should budget for all employees.
All departments.
Every single employee for the max 80 hours in our budget. So it's not killing our budget
Well,
that we anticipated.
I mean, I don't disagree with that, but at the end of the day, can't you figure out or have a ballpark? And I know it changes because of employees, but you know, utilities last year had 800 hours of comp time. Can we get that detail?
yes,
See, if we can figure it out by departments, then we can, maybe not per employee, but you can get a pretty good idea of what on average is. And if it's up or down a little bit, that's not gonna kill the budget. But I think it'll be easier by department rather than. Yeah, it's
think
probably the same thing.
Right, I think it needs to be a new line item in our budgets.
and I think it's also easier if we're saying it's 80 hours max
Right.
versus. Like I
Not
said,
knowing what it is, because there was
240,
no,
because
yeah,
it's killing
if
us.
it wasn't capped, yeah.
Okay, so then explain to me again, Heidi. Seeing that apparently we already had this conversation, I've since
The
forgot.
confusion was that the comp time does not carry over to a following year. You have to have it paid out at the end of the year. So you earn it when you choose not to get paid for your overtime, and you want to take it as comp time. Whereas PTO accrues every paycheck based on the number of hours you work and your seniority at the village. So if you've worked less than 5 years at the village, every pay period you work more than, you work your 80 hours, you get 6.15 hours of paid time off. And that increases based on every 5 years that you are employed, yeah.
Okay, so if somebody were here for 25 years. Okay, and they are of retirement age. But they want to retire at 62,
Mhm.
okay. What happens to their PTO when they retire from the village?
They get that paid out as one lump sum.
They cannot have the village continue to pay their insurance for 3 years until Medicare?
I don't know that anyone's ever asked for that.
That would be, that's an option through Cobra.
Yeah.
But they can ask, when you leave or retire, you can pay monthly, and then that insurance will continue, but it's very expensive.
Yeah, you gotta.
I know,
Right,
but-
that's high.
That's why, again, seeing I haven't, my other half works for the state. They just pay your insurance. For however long it is,
I don't think
as
that's-
long as you have that pot of money sitting there in the PTO or
So they use that money.
So
that's
use
there
that
to
money to
for
pay your
insurance.
premium?
you get to choose how to use it. You can take it in a lump sum, if that's what you wanna do. Let's say you work till 65, but if you wanted to retire at 62 and you don't wanna do Cobra, cause it's so expensive, the state will pay the same insurance that you have had for all these years.
We'd have.
And I'm not opposed to any of that if you
We'd have
guys
to put
want.
that provision.
go
in.
that way.
I don't know how difficult that is to manage.
I don't know how you would do that too, because you have to then take out tax on that money. I mean, it's still taxable.
Yeah, so
Earnings.
it's all.
I don't know how the state does it, but they do it.
Yeah, I know, my sister gets at it.
So
I
mean,
gather that's something we want to do, but I think that might be
But
slightly beyond the scope.
one thing I will say,
That's
Denise,
fine.
the marketplace is a functioning thing. You get pretty good insurance affordably. I don't know why you'd ever choose a Cobra anymore. I mean, I get it because ours is probably really great, but you can get pretty good coverage at a pretty good
Chad.
rate
I pay $1,100 a month for a $10,000
in
deductible.
the marketplace.
That's my insurance.
That's discrimination.
Sounds like, oh, I take
Really
that
that
one. I
much?
was self-insured easily. I had catastrophic.
Yeah, I mean,
health
I'm
insurance.
sure
That was
in
it.
a couple of years it might not be that high.
Oh, thank you
But
for
the-
stating that I'm older than you.
Well. Hey, but part of their compensation
So
for
we
their
have people
whole
sitting between.
is their health insurance, right? And I'm not opposed to trying to figure that out. I'm not opposed to that. But part of the reason they maybe take less in wage, or anybody does, is to have those great benefits.
I think that we should move past this and
So
we
we can
should,
look at it.
we can refer this to personnel.
It sounds like
That's
it's a
all I'm
little tricky
asking.
to execute.
Okay,
I don't know, but, all right.
Yeah, I'm not gonna solve it here, but it's always just been a problem.
Okay.
Well, we can, page 68. Health savings account.
Yeah.
Typo, a health savings account is a type of savings.
Okay.
Page 77. Tobacco usage. Smoking, including electronic cigarettes, vaping devices, and the use of tobacco products is prohibited in any Village of Sister Bay building, vehicle while operating any equipment or inside any roof permanent structures in the parks in Sister Bay. So you do not allow an employee to chew
If
or
that were the
use
case,
pouches.
Like 8 people I know would
Pardon?
be deleted immediately. You know what I mean? Like, there's guys who literally have a dip in all the time, and all they do is construction. I agree with no smoking, but I don't. I
This
don't
is-
know
Well,
about
and now,
electronic.
now there's all the nicotine pouches. It's not
Right.
even chew that's loose in your mouth. So
Yeah.
I was wondering
It
for
doesn't say
clarification.
anything about chewing, it just says electronic cigarettes.
Well, it says tobacco product.
Oh,
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, half the guys I know in construction wouldn't be able to work for Village of Sister Bay if that was enforced.
I don't know if those Zins have any tobacco.
no, I don't think they do, it's just
It's just
synthetic nicotine.
Yeah.
nicotine.
I mean, I agree with smoking and vaping, because those emit something that could be absorbed by the seats
With
in the
secondhand
truck or in the building
Yeah.
or the second, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't like those, but chewing, I have zero problem with.
Well,
It's
if you do that in a
disgusting.
vehicle,
but-
it's pretty gross because that's, you're gonna have a container there and it's.
Well,
So
I mean,
nicotine pouches are okay.
I
As
think it's a
this
newer
fit-
product. I think it's a newer product.
I think that would be okay, if it was a nicotine pouch, I think that's. As
Okay.
long as it's not actually tobacco.
So we want to state that nicotine pouches are, permitted?
I don't think we wanna
Unless
state
you
that,
you may not wanna draw attention to.
I don't,
Let's just not say it. Okay.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that it has a problem, and I get that there's a lot of guys that have a dip in all the time, but. I mean, we'll have to pass on Rick Somo,
Hey, let's go ahead and talk about it.
okay?
I'm done.
Anybody else have any questions?
Read this pretty good. Thanks, Denise.
What?
I said, thank you. You always look at this.
Well, everybody should have as many comments as I
I
have.
read it, I just did, it all
I
looked pretty,
wrote
it
it.
looked more in depth than anything I've ever seen when it
I
comes
think we
to.
actually had as many, not more comments, but we did them over so many. different
Over
things.
like months.
Yeah.
Yeah, long time.
So is the board okay with, me making these amendments, reviewing it with personnel committee chair? And if she's okay with them moving forward and offering.
Well,
this
and
to
the
employees?
personnel committee. We
Yeah.
got, because we're gonna, we got personnel again pretty
If we
soon.
want to bring it to the committee,
Yeah.
send it back to committee then?
Back to committee, and if you guys are okay with it, then we'll approve it. Okay?
I don't want to see it again.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
make
Why
the
not?
changes, committee approves
Couldn't we
them.
just go through it again? You could read it to us.
So it would be a motion to adopt the employee handbook. Pending changes, that would be the,
Pending changes,
I will make,
Personnel signing off
I
on
will
it.
make a motion to do the pending, the chair of personnel signing off on it. Motion by Bell,
Second,
second by Kadanko. Those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. It's just you then, please.
Lisa will make some edits and then get it back to you.
Sure.
Okay. I'm already on next issue, so committee appointments, give me a moment, I have to grab my. It's the same document I had this last month. First one would have to be finance, that'd be naming Mike Laskowitz to the 3-year term, Andy Warfel to the 2-year term. You want me to make a motion?
Should I approve that?
Motion by White,
second,
second by Kadanko, all those in favor?
I,
Opposed?
Opposed.
And we have plan, which want to reappoint myself because my term is up after all that was clarified, and then Steve Bashi.
Where are you looking?
That is just the plan commission that's the,
Oh, yeah, because the ad hoc green chair is the next on our,
I'm looking at the appointment list I had last month.
oh, I'm looking at what's in the
What's in the
packet.
packet?
So Steve Beshy would be, resident position, whose term would end in 4/28.
How do you spell his name again?
BACSI.
And then green tier,
Well, wait, nobody made that
oh, I'm
motion.
sorry,
What
We
about
made the motion for
Patrice?
finance.
she's already on. There's no reappointment because her term is not expired.
We didn't know if that was settled, it was left.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was already been settled.
We
I
did.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, I
So-
still agree, I want Patrice on there,
So.
but I still disagree. It is not how we did it for the last 30 years.
I understand. I wish it wasn't that way. That is how the state statute reads. I think Julie, you read it that way. Randy has read it that way.
And what
It
if,
is-
what
we
if?
have- we have been-
They're 3-year terms, is that
Yeah.
right?
For every single person, and you have trustees who serve a 2-year term. So
Oh,
you
I see what you mean.
constantly have
middle of
to
it,
then,
Yeah,
if somebody chooses not to run again,
yeah.
resigns, health issue, whatever, then you're constantly keeping track of, okay, whose term was it? When did it end? Blah, 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 where 1 year is just, it's just 1 year.
I,
30 years.
I'm not disagree, I don't know how you get around the state statute, I don't know.
We did for 30 years.
well, we can
Well-
follow it, so.
ignorance is bliss, right?
Once
Until
it's
we-
brought up, once we know it, we
Freaking
can't,
happy Chad.
we can't do it differently, so that's why
I'm-
my term actually was up.
Yeah.
That's why I would reappoint myself as well as Steve. So is that a motion you take there?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Motion by Kadanko,
Second?
second by Shampoo, all those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Here. Lisa agreed to do it.
Yay, Louise.
Thanks, you guys.
So, we have a motion to.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Kadanko,
Second.
second by Shanko, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Louise.
So
Then
welcome.
the last one is that I have there is the ZBA. That would be naming Terry Kelly to chair, no longer being alternate on the ZBA. Zoning Board of Appeals, I'm sorry.
Oh.
You have to say it that many times. And I did, just so the record has it, I did reach out to Pat Wiesner and Deb Duran. As requested last time.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Kadanko,
Second.
second by Harf, all those in favor?
Aye.
Am I missing one, Julie?
Housing committee, you have 2 trustees. I'm sorry, what was that?
Okay.
So yeah, and then naming Luis and Chad to the Housing Committee. I'll make that
I
motion.
thought you guys said last month you didn't want to be on it.
No, at the very beginning of it, when it first started a year or so ago, I did.
No, I thought at last month's meeting.
You thought I said that?
I thought
No.
both of you said that.
No, I said that, I think you may have had it confused with the ad hoc administration building committee. Okay.
There's a motion on the floor. Anybody want a
I'll
second?
second.
Second by White. Motion by Bill, second by White. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and then we have personnel name,
And I'm not gonna appoint right now. I did not.
so we'll go with 2 members.
Yeah, we're gonna go 2 numbers.
I do think, and this is we can have this conversation as a board at some point. You know, I'm not at all opposed to having a community member, particularly.
I
someone-
am.
That's,
Not someone with
okay,
HR
that's not a committee appointment. So We're not gonna,
experience.
we're not gonna discuss that. Okay,
Okay, and then Village Hall Planning Task Force.
just reappointing all the individuals there.
Yeah, and then we did Bridget last.
Yeah, and adding with Bridget as part of that, yeah. Make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
by Berto. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Monthly financial report.
Two questions that are probably really easy to answer. The one, the CDBG application payment for $5,500, I thought we didn't put that application through.
Correct. We still agreed, I think it was last December, I actually paid somebody to write it though, so we had to pay them to write it.
Oh, they had written it already, okay.
And we actually agreed to pay them 25,000. I don't know if that's all their billing or if that's just part of what we're being billed on.
Even, so they wrote it or completely wrote the application?
It was due, what,
May 15th.
yeah, so for us to even consider, we had to have it written.
Gotcha.
Okay,
But we can use it again and the information in there.
right, okay, that was it. And this is very random, and I'm sure it's correct, the Sister Bay hydrant painting for almost $30,000,
Yeah,
is
they
that
just-
right?
Yeah, they just did it like they plastic.
I know, they just came and like spray painted them white and then spray painted them red. They killed all our grass.
Was that a
Sandblasted first.
was that a code, the code thing that they had to be repainted, do you know, or? We know?
I
We're
can
on a
double check
cycle
Meg.
where
Megan, can you hear us?
Yeah, it was just a maintenance thing, to make sure that the hydrants don't get pitted or have any problems. You're typically supposed to repaint your hydrants every 10 to 15 years, so it was just a scheduled maintenance.
Look beautiful. I thought they were
Yeah.
gonna be white.
At
Yeah,
first.
that's
Yeah.
good.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
White was just primer.
Wait, I thought, well, now we have a new color. So, yeah, even you thought that. Good.
I remember last year talking possibly at parks, but for sure at board, about having True Green do other small pieces of the village, like the corner of Scandia and the highway where a hydrant is. And they mow it, so it's gotta be the villages, and they don't cut the grass very often.
No, they
It's
don't.
full of dandelions.
Yep.
It looks terrible.
Well, they should cut back the hedge, really.
And
What-
And I
what-
brought it up at that
Scan
time that we were supposed to be
and
talking
42
to them
on
about
the
doing
west
these
side.
couple other little patches.
Megan, do you recall that? Was it that True Green, that wasn't recommended by the hydrant?
Yeah,
And-
they we don't really recommend to put chemicals next to fire hydrants. I believe it was I can't remember the year on it, but we had received a letter because at some point they were putting a grease on the hydrant caps to make them easier to turn, and the DNR just didn't anything near potable water. So
But then your crew was gonna go out there and weed whack it or maintain it instead, correct?
yeah, we try to hit the ones in town that are really surrounded by weeds. So if anybody notices any that are bad, just reach out and we'll hit them and weed whack around them.
So the DNR told you not to do that by a hydrant, and yet, right across the street, there are 14,000 gallons of fuel buried next to well number 1. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, not really. It's more just like surface penetration. And also chemicals can have a tendency to pit the steel that make the hydrants. We see that a lot with like road salt pitting curb stops and other infrastructure that we have throughout the village. So it's kind of just a maintenance hassle. But I mean, technically there is no code that states they can't put lawn chemicals next to the hydrants. Is just something that's not recommended.
That's okay, thank you, Megan.
Megan, real quick, how many fire hydrants do we have, just out of curiosity?
Sister Bay has about 247, I believe the total was, and then Liberty Grove has 44.
So,
It's not more for Liberty Grove.
so is that $100 each then?
I don't know, but that number makes way more sense now that you said.
It
Yeah.
was it was $130 each hydrant.
Okay,
That
thank you for
makes
that.
it way better.
Other questions? Kurt, anything?
No.
Anyone else? Pay the bills in the amount of $1,363,168.69. Motion by Bell,
Second.
second by White. All those-
Question
Yeah.
before you vote? So I don't remember, and maybe it didn't have to come to parks, but the Pigeon asphalt paving. I mean, it looks great, glad it's done, but we never discussed it. It was not in a CIP, I don't remember it being specifically in the budget.
What page?
Where are you looking at?
103.
I think that was discussed, Denise, last year on our walkabout, when we had talked about putting the bike racks in and then putting gravel around them.
Oh, in front of the bathrooms?
Yep, and then removing the bench and redoing, I think it might have been concrete maybe that we had talked about, I'm not sure. But I believe that was talked about on the walkabout last year, I could double check.
You don't have to waste your time.
The good thing is it was
Nice.
covered as part of the, I mean, we had the funds. It actually came out of the municipal reimbursement funds we had set aside for waterfront park.
All right.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, committee reports. We'll go through and just do questions again. So we have ad hoc admin. Local byways. Committee did not meet. Fire board. These were.
Yeah, I'll read you what I have for fire board. Mike
I
Colts,
mean, I guess I'm just looking for questions at this point. I mean, like, presume everybody's run them.
everything's good.
Okay. I believe we will have the county next month to talk about a couple things, including their radio system.
Is he going to show up or is it not a representative?
The count, like the county employees.
Oh, so
He's
we're,
talking, he's
I'm
talking
talking
about our
about our rep.
board member.
Yeah.
I have given up. I'm trying to talk to him. If you want to have that, Patrick, I would encourage you to do so.
I think that's pretty pitiful.
It's
I
pretty bad.
don't
really.
disagree with that,
Yeah.
but. And our green tier. Historical Society,
I apologize that you didn't get, a report in the packet, because of cell phone outage, I couldn't get a hold of the secretary to give me, send you guys them, so. She just sent them to me tonight on my phone, but I'll go real quick here, the Chris Kindle Market made a profit of $50,000 this year. We're in December. The executive director search candidate declined the offer because basically we're asking for her to do two jobs, operating manager and executive director. So she declined. And we're still in the search for an executive director. The Waterfront Museum, John Blossom reported that talked to the architect and it does not require an elevator or a bathroom. And I'm sure this will return to the board in more detail. The farmer's market name is changed to the open air market. And a couple of things coming up for Historical Society. We have our 30th anniversary party. That's gonna be at Al Johnson's. All family members that established the Historical Society are invited to that. Mother's Day brunch, they had that for a fundraiser. The attendance was down this year. And they're gonna be having a vintage postcard display. And Strawberry Fest is June 28th. Any questions?
we discussed here. Any other questions on that? Library Commission? Marina Committee, I wanted to, this could come up under Parks too, but they've got an autonomous mower there now. So you can see the robot
I
going
saw
out
it in
there.
operation,
That
man.
is, it's kind of interesting.
So Nate, I wanted to let
Did
you
you
know
see
about that. That's a demo. It's on trial for
Sure.
them. Yeah. Escavana,
Escobar,
that company,
Yeah.
Yeah.
has, let them try it.
that's really interesting. Yeah, I was there and Dave pointed it out to me. Saw the patterns we're finding. But anyway, Marina Committee, questions on that? Parking Committee has not met. Parks, Properties, Streets.
I have a question for the Parks, Properties and Streets.
Sure.
I saw in the packet, you're talking about getting, historical markers in town, which I think is just an awesome idea. It's great.
Well, we're working with Terry Wolf.
You're working
And
so
John.
well. How wonderful.
Yeah.
What's the timeline on that? And do you have money for that? And
Well, we're working with them on it. First, we've got to decide on a design, and actually, we're gonna talk about that, a location for that at our at the spring walkabout, where we walk through
Yeah.
around the village, and
Yeah.
and we're gonna be walking around a waterfront park. Cause Terry thinks that a couple of locations there would be good.
Yeah.
And it closer to eye level.
Mhm,
So once we determine where,
mhm.
and then Terry has reached out to one of the artists that there are two, I think, that do them. One that did what's in Bailey's Harbor, and then there's another one that did one up in Newport, right? To get some sort of an estimate on what it would cost.
Mhm.
So I don't know that the village is gonna I'm not sure what our participation will be.
Oh,
But
okay.
we're gonna work, because they were interested in basically our property and looking at village property.
I
But
did
we
originally say we would look
pay for
at
some,
with
some
minutes
participation.
for reimbursement.
okay, oh, that's right, okay, all right, so that's where we are, so where is it gonna be? And then based on where it is, maybe, and the dimensions of it, now, which sort of design are we looking at, and then how much? So probably not this season, but.
Well, it's a fantastic idea and it's gonna be so good for Sister Bay, our visitors and
Mhm. Yeah.
everyone that lives here and educate everybody about our history.
Mhm.
Not even our visitors, just all the people that have recently moved here
True.
that don't know it.
Yeah. So John should be reporting back to the board, either John or Terry Wolf on, so, and we'll let him know too, you know,
Okay.
what comes out of that walk.
Thank you.
Personnel, questions for personnel? Okay, Plan Commission,
Wait to see the new review form. I think that was long.
SBA,
SBAA,
any questions for
first meeting today. So.
Oh, you got a different meeting schedule, because it's.
No, I'm just saying, we do have a meeting on Thursday morning,
Yeah,
but I
it's,
met with the people. today.
oh, you're not with that one, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been having a couple conversations with them around the Fall Fest and the emergency responses at Fall Fest, and there's a couple things we're looking at doing there. I'm gonna hit a couple of the businesses that are on the top of the hill. Probably hit up Husby's in the bowl.
It's in the middle of the hill, so.
I mean, yeah, but I'm looking from a radio perspective. Gotta hit up some of those businesses and see if I can get them to,
Trying to
to
have
work with
some
us.
available.
But they're
Yeah,
different.
oh, no, you know, we actually have a Cellcom tower going up on, but, real quick, Kimberly had one brought in for cherry drop.
Oh, gee,
I don't think why, we had it on our property.
they brought in a cow?
Yeah, so
Brought a cow?
I reached,
Wow.
she already emailed me back about it, I asked about it, but then Cellcom was having their thing, so I just kind of let that email go. But I don't think it'll be a problem.
Wait, Kimberly, who, what,
Kimberly Sawyer works for them now, John's daughter,
was she working
and
with
she's,
Cellcom?
yeah, and she's.
Well,
just
that's how
one of those
she got
people,
the
like,
cow.
She gets stuff done.
Yeah,
We have there, I stopped getting cows up here like in 2019. It's really hard to get them. You gotta know
Gotta
somebody.
get the right person,
Yes.
you gotta know, Chad.
No, not Chad,
Hey, man.
John.
yeah, way better.
Like a portable cell phone
Anyway,
tower, like an
okay.
amplifier.
Tourism
Oh, I
zone,
didn't call it.
tourism zone.
Not
What's
much
it
there. There's been a couple of execs,
Well, at least let's just wait and see people.
Sorry.
We don't know.
not much have come out of it. no.
Utilities. Okay. Village Hall Planning Task Force. Accept the committee reports.
So moved.
Motion by Hausen,
Second,
second by Kadanka, all those in favor?
I,
Right.
Matters to be placed on a future agenda referred to committee. What was the thing that just came up here, the personnel?
Mhm.
That item. Anything else?
Well, what we want to ask
Well,
housing
Oh, yeah,
to do and finance to
finance,
do.
too, right?
and then finance for,
Yeah, the other
Yeah.
finance.
And also personnel and just, but that's gonna, actually, that's not a committee, never mind. Personnel handbook.
Right.
But that's not going in, okay.
that everything?
Well, there's one thing that came out of the marina meeting. The marina wants to charge the Historical Society rent for the museum. So somehow village board needs to talk about that.
yeah, I don't think it's at that level yet, but down the road.
Yeah, I think.
Is it just one member?
No, it's all of us,
Oh,
but it's
okay.
down from a bigger number, so I think it's a pretty good compromise.
Well, I mean, wait, I mean, back when I was on Marina,
We
we
can't
were,
really talk about
we
it.
just said, could you, like $1,000 a month, something like that.
Yeah, we even went lower,
So
but anyway,
we need to let this work through Marina then
Yeah.
before we
Yeah,
address
Julie's
it. We
working
know
on
that it's
something.
coming out there.
and it'll come back to Marina and before it'll come here.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some discussion in the Marina Committee without the person there who is.
Spearheading.
Well, who we want to charge the rent to. It was really
Well,
hard to
we
have that
don't-
discussion
no,
without.
it wasn't even, he doesn't really represent.
I know, but
historical
there, I
society.
mean, it was very visibly upset, which I get, but it's
Oh.
hard to have a meaningful
Oh, yeah.
discussion on Zoom with somebody very visibly upset,
Yes.
you know, so I think it would be a good discussion to have. On just the committee.
We'll give that back to Marina. Okay. On to,
One thing I'd like to put on a future agenda, because I think I have a good idea for this, is the the village newsletter. I have an idea for it that I'd like to run past the board, just, I don't know what committee to take it to.
some of the proposal, we'll put it on.
Okay. I think because I know Julie had mentioned, like, look, if you guys want to do it, have at it. And I think it could be a good collaboration with the SGAA, because they put on every and stuff. And if we could work with them on, because they have the format and stuff, I think it could work. You know, I don't know.
I still have the old phone.
Okay, great. I was gonna talk to Ellie about it, because I don't think it's a lot more work for them, and I'm more than happy to coordinate content from our committee chairs. So I think it could work okay.
We can talk about that one.
So if you want to add it on there, I can work with her, and then we can at least run it, get it started, so that next month we're in June, maybe we can put something out by August, or just maybe start getting it going.
I'm thinking like quarterly.
Yeah,
We'll talk.
quarterly. No, but I was thinking quarterly, yeah.
This is Ellie. We can definitely talk about it. We're very tapped right now.
Snuck up on
we
me.
can do what we
That
can
was
do.
what I wanted to talk to you about, but I know you're not feeling well.
Yeah.
So,
No, we can definitely talk through some stuff.
all right, so, well, once you're feeling better, you can let me know.
Is there anything else? And since part of our committee's already taken a recess, I'll take a 5-minute recess, and we usually go to close, then recess, but we'll do this so that we're all come back here.
I gotta quit drinking so many fluid before these meetings, because it's like.
You're gonna W-2 from us.
Do. I don't care if I'm allowed to or not. But Nate said, I get a W-2. I get a W-2. I'm not technically an employee.
You're not an employee. Trustees are not employed.
I just didn't know if there's a policy.
What are you asking for? Health insurance? Vaping? Those are the most disgusting things in the world. Terrible. Terrible.
I don't smoke anymore. With that state.
That's a lot. You know, smoking's cooler. Well, you think we're really not gonna find out about these babes up for you 30 years down the road or even soon?
I can't believe we haven't found out how bad cell phones are for us yet.
Wow.
That's a matter of
You know,
time.
we're all addicted though.
Yeah,
Everybody
we're
is.
all gonna get brain.
Oh, no, there's.
It's okay.
Any person using a vape in a building.
Yeah.
Like the general public should be allowed to vape.
Also, we have on that. It's just, we have the employee handbook.
I try to
Don't
fight
we have-
it at Husby's all the time, because people, I'm like, guys, you need to do this better. Nobody wants cloud or whatever's coming out of there when they're eating their dinner.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just these young kids, it seems like so many do it, like, yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, we have no policy on our buildings.
We don't have no smoking signs or anything on there? I mean, should we?
Just light up a cigarette next to me and see how it goes.
Is there a statewide policy on smoking in buildings?
No,
There isn't?
well, there is smoking, right? There's smoking's.
Well, there's a smoking ban.
Yeah,
In public buildings, okay, so that's why maybe we
Well,
don't.
but it's not, but Husby's is not a public building, it's a private property.
No, I got it, I'm just talking about ours.
They're not allowed. So,
I know in public buildings you cannot.
yeah,
But I don't know why it's smoking.
they probably have
Yes,
to
I
put something on it.
I think that's pretty bad.
I drink.
Yeah. I've never.
Do you really?
I guess it's better than
Doctors
smoking,
now.
but it's still terrible.
Take a go.
I still have secondhand smoke. From bartending.
Sorry, I didn't warn that.
Yeah.
We got it.
Yeah.
I
When I was.
Can I
training,
you probably won't need my orange.
when finally they wouldn't. let smoke.
Yeah.
With smoking planes, and you can smoke in your car. So what they did was, what they have a main door. Yeah, and you look inside
You
there
couldn't even see
and
it.
you saw all these people. And
I
I'm like,
know.
oh my gosh.
And it was all like you couldn't even see you couldn't even make out the people. I remember I was old enough to remember that part.
They're a lot.
I mean,
It's freaking 12:00 and they're outside
Because they're trash.
There's nowhere to go. And they're all outside. At the-
Trash.
outside the site. They're smoking away.
No, I didn't.
Before
Like,
they
they
go
were
back.
like, streets that would be like.
That's the only bad evidence.
I don't know if that's.
And I'm like, I should wait till like the shirts.
I never did.
I
never
get
did any of it.
I'll
Recycle.
do everything I can.
Recycling's in the trash.
Most of my friends did that.
In the kitchen.
Okay,
You drink smoke us.
okay, so 11A, consider motion to convene into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19851G, to confer with legal counsel who either orally or in writing will advise the village board strategy to be adopted with respect to current or likely litigation regarding preserving foundations, Bertram contract, and Knowles Nelson. Motion to convene into executive session.
Moved.
Motion by Berto,
Second.
second by Hart, roll call, Bell, yes?
Berto, yes.
Houston, yes.
Congo, yes.
Campbell, yes.
Harp, yes.
Why, yes.
Yeah, closed. Okay, I'll make a motion, we come out of closed session. Motion by Bell,
Second,
second by Shampo,
roll call,
Bell, yes?
Shampoo, yes.
Harp, yes.
Why, yes.
Houston, yes.
Congo, yes.
Okay, we're back and open. Any motions somebody'd like to make?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to approve the addendum to the fiber project agreement.
As discussed.
As discussed. Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Austin, by White, favor?
Aye.
No, but I abstained. Is there any further, we will direct staff to,
There's two other motions.
okay, the other motions.
You got Nelson.
No, I do. I make a motion that no action will be taken with the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Grant until Julie Schmelzer appears back with the discussions from the DNR.
Second,
Okay, motion by White, second by Shampoo, all those in favor?
I
Okay, motion carries.
I will make a motion to direct staff in terms of address 2387 Ava Court, Hope Court to send a letter as discussed.
Motion by Kadanko, second by White, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Not Sharon knows though.
Motion carries. Okay,
Couldn't remember. I couldn't remember all three.
no action was taken, no further action was taken on two that already had action. Meeting, so then a motion to adjourn would be in order.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by White, second by Hart, all those in favor?
Aye.
Hey.